So, our hero was basically Earth's low-key Superman, doing good deeds on the down low, like a ninja of niceness. And then, bam, the infamous Truck-kun, the #1 isekai travel agent, punched his ticket. Next thing he knows, he's face to face with a goddess named Herja, which beats a hospital bill any day. She's all like, wow, such a good boy, and offers him a do-over in a fantasy world, but he's got just one little thing to ask. He wants to be god-tier, powerful, but live like a total nobody. The goddess says, deal, but then adds some seriously messed up fine print. The catch? If anyone figures out he's OP, his heart goes pop. So, welcome to your new life as Urian, orphan extraordinaire. Life at the orphanage was rough, run by a director who was basically a Disney villain, so Urian played it cool and kept a low profile. He pretended to be the wimpiest kid on the block to keep his secrets safe, and the only bright spot was his sister Ella, his personal bodyguard and snack sharer. Then the director decides Urian would make a great snack for a wolf god, but Ella, being the best sister ever, pulls a Mulan and offers to go in his place. Urian was about to peace out and face the music, but then the director starts giving Ella an unwanted neck hug and monologuing about his evil resume. Big mistake. Huge. Forgetting all about the whole exploding heart thing, Urian unleashes one heck of a punch, and poof, no more director. He saved Ella and got them both a get-out-of-jail-free card. And that's when he found the ultimate life hack. As long as nobody knows he's the one doing the smiting, his ticker keeps on ticking. Flash forward 4 years, and our guy is staring down some creature straight out of a horror movie, the kind of thing that would make a grown man cry for his mommy. Urian's just looking at it with these huge eyes. You'd think he's terrified, but nope, his mind is on something way more important. He forgot his morning milk. Seriously. The kid's got a complex about not hitting his growth spurt in the last 4 years. The monster, completely unsympathetic to Urian's height struggles, lunges in for the kill, but before you can even say fight scene, it's over. One punch. Urian literally sent the monster's top half into another dimension, proving he's got that one-punch hero potential. With the creature's head now a permanent part of the landscape, Urian's first thought is, I wonder if eating those antlers will make me stronger. Yeah, not much has changed. Still ridiculously overpowered, still a complete secret. Cut 2. Ella's all grown up and rocking a sharp uniform. It's time for the Magic Academy entrance exams, and their chaperone is the awesome senior sister Arlen. She's the sweet lady who took them all in after the director had his, unfortunate workplace accident. Out of the 4 kids, Ella and Urian are prepped and ready to ace this thing. Arlen is thrilled, going on about how the big guy upstairs works in mysterious ways. She's pretty much convinced the director's little disappearing act was for the best, and she's got high hopes for these 2 future stars. Urian and Ella promise Arlen they'll crush the exam, flashing back to that grim old orphanage where the 4 of them made a pact to get into the academy. And now, that dream is finally within reach. But wait, there's more. Our boy has been counting the seconds for this. I mean, fighting giant monsters for the past 4 years? Pfft, that was a cakewalk. But going to the academy? Oh, now that's the real challenge. Urian finally gets to live his ultimate fantasy, being a secret god surrounded by a bunch of talented hotshots who have no clue. This is his jam. He absolutely loves the idea of being the underdog everyone underestimates. The thought of it just makes him giddy with excitement for school to start. So, about this academy. It's the Royal Magic School, a fancy-pants institution set up by the royals to basically create the next generation of superheroes. They don't care if you're rich or poor. If you've got the goods, they'll turn you into a monster, bashing, saving hero. Alright, pop quiz, hotshot. It's exam day at the Magic Academy, so let's go check out the snooty rich kids. This blonde dude, Chris, is totally digging the academy's high-class vibe and gives the room a scan like he's judging everyone's tax bracket. He clocks that almost everyone's rocking a blue "I'm better than you" emblem until his eyes lock on a red pin. The guy is absolutely floored he might be up against the actual princess. Suddenly, his designer boots feel a little tight. Just as Chris is realizing this year's competition is going to be brutal, his snob radar pings on a group of commoners off to the side. Chris spots Ella and Urian, who look about as coordinated as a baby deer on ice. It's painfully obvious they didn't come from money. Seizing the chance to feel superior again, our golden boy starts trash-talking the commoners for being totally delusional just for showing up. But he's not flying solo. The rest of the noble clique is throwing shade like it's a 100-degree day. They're all pretty sure Ella and Urian are going to be the first ones kicked to the curb, figuring the school must have a pity charity program. Now, Ella's looking pretty bummed by all the smack talk, but Urian is basically having a main character fantasy moment. He is absolutely loving that everyone's underestimating him, just like in every story about a hero hiding his power level, except he's got his sister with him. She, on the other hand, is so over it, and is about to walk. not wanting to hear another word from these spoiled brats. Urian tries to stop her, but she schools him, saying these kids only care about looks and status. In the end, our boy decides to follow her lead. Even though he's enjoying the drama, let's cut to the supervisor, who's kicking off the Academy's 29th entrance exam. And the supervisor is none other than the head honcho of the Royal Magic Academy himself, Sir Magus. He tells all the nervous wrecks that the exam is a piece of cake with just one goal: use swords and magic to protect people. Simple, right? Their basic skills with swords and magic are about to be tested, but the nobles still won't give Urian and Ella a break, dissing our boy even during the principal's speech. One of the instructors, who looks like a knockoff Aizawa from My Hero Academia, breaks down the first test. They've got to use a sword to slice a target behind the teacher. Ryumi then dramatically shows them how it's done by dicing a scarecrow. Watching him tear that scarecrow apart with such flawless style is enough to get all the candidates' hearts racing. But okay, the light show's over. The instructor gets down to business and calls out the first candidate's name. Some poor girl gets shoved into the arena and is told to go whenever she's ready, which, by the look on her face, is never. She nervously asks if she'll get the boot for not slicing the scarecrow in one go. The instructor, Ryan B., says nah, they don't actually expect them to be pros yet. They get that these applicants are just a bunch of kids, so instead of trying to be some kind of anime hero, Ryan B. just tells the girl to give it her best shot. With that, she takes a swing and barely even scratches the thing, not even close to halfway. Ryan B. calls up the next contestant, Chris, who at least manages to chop it halfway through. Same deal with a kid named Rashal, who also hits the halfway mark. Finally, Ella's name is called, and the girl looks like she wants to bolt. Right before the test, Urian told her to just aim for the halfway point like everyone else. She's clinging to that advice. Stepping up to the scarecrow, Ella's face is pure determination, basically a silent watch this to all the snooty nobles in the crowd. The rich kids immediately start running their mouths about the farm girl, but she's not even giving their nasty comments the time of day. This girl's got the "I've seen things" look on her face, probably having a flashback to that one time 4 years ago when she epically failed at big sister duty. So, she channels all that angst into one heck of a sword swing, slicing that scarecrow clean in two, leaving the instructor's jaw on the floor. You can just tell Urian is thinking, "That's my sis." Suddenly, all the haters are her #1 fans, practically begging to borrow her sword like it's the latest iPhone. And our red-headed hero? Oh, she's loving every second of it. She's just found her new life's mission: protect Urian, who she's always seen as a walking noodle, finally getting a glimpse of the instructor's perspective. Yep, her motivation is now officially Operation Keep Urian from tripping over his own feet, because in her eyes, he's always been hilariously helpless. And now she gets why the instructor was so impressed. And it clicks for Rayonbi why the teacher was so shook. Turns out, some genius rigged the scarecrow with a magic wand inside, which means any normal kid who tries to go all-out Hulk smash on it would just bonk their sword against the wand. The only way to actually slice through this thing is to get all fancy and juice up their weapon with magic, basically turning it into a lightsaber. A move that, by the way, most grown-ups can't even pull off. So the fact this girl did it by accident? Yeah, this little test just proved Ella is basically a prodigy. The talent is off the charts with this one. This whole display gets the instructor to call up the next contestant, her brother Urian, who shuffles onto the stage and squares up, ready to give that dummy what for. The teacher is still reeling from Ella's performance, and now he's super curious to see if talent actually runs in the family. The big moment arrives. Urian swings, and it's a total whiff, disappointing everyone as the kid can't even graze the poor, defenseless puppet. The snooty nobles jump on this immediately, of course, ready to roast the peasant, calling him weak, pathetic, and other mean things you'd hear in a middle school cafeteria. Even Ryung thinks the kid is pretty basic compared to his sister. But let's not forget, our boy Ryung has a weird thing for being underestimated. Like, he gets a crazy kick out of it. Seriously, my dude's face right now looks like he just went Super Saiyan and took down Goku or something. Anyway, on to the next test, a magic off. For this round, their teacher is a gorgeous sorceress named G, who tells them to point their wands and shoot some magic at a target, but one kid immediately raises a major complaint. He whines that he can't do magic, but plot twist, it doesn't matter, because this little gadget is basically a super soaker. It makes water even if you have zero magical talent. So yeah, this means literally anyone can use this thing to hit the target, even if their magic skills are completely non-existent. First up is the resident smug blonde kid, Chris, who confidently aims his little water gun wand and shoots a perfect whirlpool right into the bullseye. Chris's hype squad goes wild, praising him for being so awesome, while G just kinda tells him to go sit down. Next up, it's Urian's turn, and he's all excited to give it a go, but instead of just handing over the wand like a normal person, Our favorite snobby noble just drops it on the ground, getting this super punchable look on his face as he reminds the peasant of his place. Like, how dare you breathe the same air as a noble? Hearing that, Urian looks completely stunned, and his sister is freaking out. The instructor tells the kids to play nice, and as our boy bends down to pick up the wand, he gets that weirdly happy "I love being the underdog" look on his face again. He's totally stoked because Chris just handed him a golden opportunity to be the center of attention. No extra effort required. The kid gets into position, absolutely buzzing with excitement to fail on purpose, just like he planned. This way, he figured, he could cement his status as the secretly overpowered character for all time. But in that split second, the boy messes up, big time. Urian gets so carried away with his own hype that he accidentally channels way too much power into the wand. He unleashes so much juice that the wand just explodes into a million pieces. The teacher is speechless, but more importantly, all the haters are instantly shut up, and a look of pure panic washes over Urian's face as he realizes he just completely blew his whole "I'm a weakling" cover. So by absolutely obliterating the wand, he left every candidate speechless, including his own sister. The rich kids were freaking out, completely clueless how a magic stick could just go kaboom, especially when the dude holding it was just some farmer. This whole situation was a hot mess for our boy, who was desperately trying to keep his OP status on the down low. It was super lucky for him that his number one hater, the blonde girl, was already taking a deep dive into the river of denial. She was screaming about it being a faulty tool, because there was no other way her brain could process what just happened after all of Chris's trash talk. The other noble brats started backing him up, convinced the wand just got performance anxiety and broke down from overuse. Their shock quickly flipped back to roasting him for being so lame that even the equipment couldn't handle it. And once again, our weirdo masochist was totally loving the attention. He was soaking up every insult like it was a compliment, while also realizing that the wand was way too flimsy to handle even a tiny drop of his power. His whole secret identity plan was about to get flushed right down the toilet. If he blew his cover this badly during the entrance exam, Urian knew he had to be way more careful from now on. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. With 2 tests down, the Academy's head honcho stepped up to announce the deets for the 3rd and final test. They were getting split into teams of 3 to go into the woods and yank a fang from a monster bear. The principal made a big speech about how being a show-off with a sword or fancy mana tricks is great and all, but it means jack squat if you can't handle a real monster fight. This test was basically a put up or shut up against a genuine threat. Meanwhile, Urian was just thinking about the monster hunting mission while his sister was practically vibrating with excitement. She was all hyped up, thinking they were one step closer to their dream, and Urian just cracked a smile at her. As he nodded along to her pep talk, the team assignments started. And of course, it was all going to be totally random. They were sorted by whatever color their emblem lit up. For Ella, it was bright red. And what do you know, Urian got the same color. Or so you'd think, because PSYCH, that wasn't Urian at all. In reality, Ella was about to team up with the princess and some other guy, not her brother. Meanwhile, Chris was in the back, absolutely fuming that he didn't get paired with the princess. Instead, Urian was actually having a great time, knowing Ella was definitely teamed up with some strong players. That way, he wouldn't have to worry about her getting into trouble. She looked pretty pumped herself, so he gave her a big cheerful wave goodbye. But the craziest part was, he wasn't teamed up with anyone. The other candidates were avoiding him like he was radioactive. They all thought he was some kind of jinxed, pathetic loser. And just when he started to think he was going solo, he heard 2 other candidates walking up. And get this, all 3 of them had different colored emblems. A guy with blue glasses named Michelle was super happy to see him and even praised Urian's performance, while the other girl, Tian, was just looking to have some fun. Yeah, she was the same person who got called out in the sword test earlier. Well, lucky for them, our boys finally got a squad, so they wouldn't have to go it alone. But that didn't stop the Purple Light crew from acting like they owned the place. They started bullying the farmer squad for grouping up, and the comments really seemed to hit Michelle hard because, well, it's pretty obvious everyone knows he's already bombed the entrance exam 4 times, basically making him the poster child for having 0 talent. As for Tian, she's known as a washed-up noble with no friends. In their eyes, this trio was the perfect little team of pitiful rejects. Urian glanced over at his crew, taking in the whole sad sack scene. Yep, they looked like they'd just lost a puppy, and the rich kids were totally loving it. But our boy, ever the optimist, was all like, hey, we can totally bounce back from this and rub it in their stupid faces. And just like that, his little speech flipped a switch. Rohul, especially, was beaming like a maniac, practically glowing as he pointed out how adorably naive Urian was. He was just so impressed that our kid wasn't fazed by a little trash talk from the snooty nobles. Right then and there, Rohul decided he had to pass this exam, if only to see Urian's face at the academy. He was all, let's ace this thing. Even though, let's be real, their confidence was a little questionable. Meanwhile, Tian was practically sweating bullets. Having already bombed the previous 2 tests, she knew their report card was looking pretty grim. It took Urian a hot second for the reality to sink in, and then bam, his soul shriveled up like a raisin. He'd been trying to fly under the radar with his secret powers this whole time. He'd done a pretty good job of playing weak, but the downside was, well, his test scores were also playing weak. The kid was starting to realize he was in deep doo-doo, and his dream of getting into the academy was circling the drain. He couldn't bear the thought of letting his sister down and was about to have a full-on meltdown, but Rokal swooped in like a hype man to remind him they were going to crush this thing together. See, thanks to some digging, he knew there was a loophole. Even if you flunked the first 2 tests, you could still squeak by if you absolutely nailed the final exam. And this monster exam? It was the final boss, the big kahuna. Worth so many points, it was basically the only thing that mattered. This was music to our boy's ears. Finally, a chance to undo his epic fails and actually get in. Of course, that all sounded great on paper. In reality, the second they stepped into the forest, their master plan went completely off the rails, thanks to a giant, fire-breathing bear that decided to play tag with them. The 3 of them were about as useful as a screen door on a submarine, so they did the only thing they could, run for their lives. After they finally ditched the oversized teddy bear, Roshal, catching his breath, was like, okay, yeah, that thing is just as scary as everyone said. Urian, on the other hand, was just bummed out. For him, taking down the monster was supposed to be the easy part. Ditching his buddies to go beast mode was going to be a total headache, so the poor kid had to cook up a more creative solution. Even though he could probably take on hundreds of those bears single-handedly, Tian was already planning their funeral, convinced they were about to fail spectacularly. And to make matters worse, there were no do-overs. If they flunked this year's entrance exam, that was it, and none of them were emotionally equipped to handle that kind of rejection. Then, some brilliant mind suggested they should just aim for the bear's molars instead of, actually trying to fight the thing. See, the test instructions said hunt the creature and retrieve the molar, but the problem was, they couldn't handle the hunt part because they were ridiculously weak. But the retrieve the molar part? Totally doable. A baffled Urian was like, wait, is that even allowed? This was Rokal's cue to unveil his genius strategy, pointing out how the bear's mouth was so gnarly that its teeth were basically always on display, which meant they had a clear shot. With his brilliant leadership, they could snag a tooth without even scratching the bear. Yeah, Rokal was a little too confident in this scheme. He was convinced this year's hunting test was a total cakewalk, and to prove it, he casually handed Tian a bag of deer blood. His instructions? Just, splash this all over yourself. It sounded nuts, but there was a method to his madness. Apparently, these bear monsters have a super sniffer. The idea was, if they could bait it with the smell of blood, it would go bonkers, act all reckless, and hopefully knock out its own molars in the process. As you can imagine, our white-haired friend was not exactly thrilled about becoming bear-bait Barbie, especially since she ran like she had 2 left feet. But Rokal could not have cared less. He was positive his plan was so foolproof it would work even if she tripped over her own shoelaces. The whole vibe was super sketchy, and our girl was starting to get the heebie-jeebies, especially when Roshal started dropping creepy hints that the monster would be an easy target while it was chowing down, which was a totally chill and not at all horrifying thought. Right as Roshal was about to pop open the bag of monster ketchup, our boy Urian snagged his arm and gave him the serious, "Dude, what are you doing? Look." Urian was genuinely wondering if this dude's elevator didn't go all the way to the top, since he was just casually planning to turn Tian into bait, all while Roshal acted like he'd done nothing wrong. His genius logic? This way, they'd both ace the academy entrance exam and be home free. The nerd basically said a little sacrifice was totally necessary to hit their goal. I mean, it's not like they had a plan B for snagging this bear, unless they went with his human bait strategy. Roshal was super stubborn about it, and using his low-class status and lack of mana as an excuse for murder, he practically begged Urian to ditch the rich girl and join Team Evil. That way, they could just coast through the test on her misfortune. Besides, he argued, nobody else was going to help her, since everyone had already written her off. Being called a lost cause totally triggered a flashback to her family's greatest hits. Tian was basically the family's official designated failure. While her brother Ricky was Mr. Perfect Genius, she was always stuck in his shadow, to the point where her name was like a party foul at family gatherings. As she was having this sad little trip down memory lane, Urian swooped in to defend her, arguing that everyone gets their glow-up moment eventually, and this four-eyed nerd had zero right to decide who was worthy. This made Roshal totally lose his marbles and he hawked a loogie of blood right in their faces, basically screaming that they should all go down together, the super strong smell of blood. was like ringing the dinner bell for the fire-breathing monster. It shot towards them like a heat-seeking missile, and Tian was pretty sure they were about to become a furry, fiery snack. Meanwhile, Urian's just staring at this bear with a big ol' grin like he's watching his favorite TV show, and the lady glances over at our boy and figures Urian is totally useless because he's a weakling. So, in a final screw it, I'll do it myself moment, she decides she's gonna be the one to take this furball down. The terrifying bear charges, and the girl just freezes like a deer in the headlights. All those nasty words from her family started playing on a loop in her head, and to basically tell them all to shove it, Tian whipped out her magic. A windshield. This swirly wall of air was actually enough to stop the bear's first lunge, as Tian finally proved she could do more than just be a pretty statue. She cooked up a wind sword next and let loose about 6 slashes at the bear, completely convinced she was about to win this thing. Except her piddly little slashes did absolutely nothing, not even a scratch on the monster's thick hide. Even Urian was like, dang, that thing's built like a tank. Tian didn't even sweat it and decided to use her magic to yeet Urian out of the danger zone while our boy was still trying to process what was going on. Tian basically yelled, "Hey, I'm launching you. But your landing is not my problem." At the same time, she's thinking a few bumps and bruises are way better than him becoming bear chow with her, to be fair. What a champ. Seriously, I'm impressed. She's not your typical, "oh please save me" side character you see all the time. Tian gives her wand a flick, there's a flash of light, and Urian goes flying into the stratosphere. His encouraging words echoed in her head like a feel-good memory. For the first time ever, someone actually had her back and told her to go for it. But, what good is all that bravery when she's about to get totally pancaked by the bear's attack? Tian gave up all hope, and right as the monster's claw made contact, she just passed out cold. Just as Tian was about to faceplant, Urian zipped back onto the scene at warp speed and caught her, totally stoked that she finally found her inner sparkle. He gently set her down, thinking this was the perfect time to clean up this whole mess, especially since Rashal had already booked it like the chicken he was. So, with no one around to witness the bear's abstract art project, and the monster gearing up for round 2, Urian just chilled, waiting for a solid second. Then he threw a punch so epic it literally sent the creature to the Shadow Realm, basically proving his point. I'm not in danger. I am the danger. The monster's ghost probably groaned as Urian announced he was going to collect its fangs for a souvenir. But he was feeling a little trollish and wanted to pull a prank on Rashal. Only problem was, he had no idea where that little bookworm had skedaddled off to. Speaking of which, Rashal had apparently gathered his own little fan club, and they were all zeroed in on Ella's crew. Ricky was just watching like, what is this, a schoolyard showdown? I mean, these guys don't normally pull out weapons on anyone, but here they were, with one of them asking the farm girl Ella to join their little club. But of course, Ricky was quick to remind this clown car of a team that only the principal gets to decide who passes and who gets a big fat F. And based on how they were acting, Ricky was really wondering what their master plan was. It looked like the farmer squad had formed some kind of angry pact. Their big brain idea was to make the nobles fail, giving all of them a free pass to the winner's circle. When Ricky heard this genius strategy, he knew they weren't backing down. It was super obvious these commoner kids had a major chip on their shoulder about the whole noble thing, apparently for being overlooked. Naturally, Ricky couldn't care less and found it absolutely hysterical that they thought getting Ella on their team would give them a snowball's chance in a sword fight against him. But then the kid got all smug and corrected him. He said they had zero plans to actually fight the nobles head-on. Then, in a moment of pure genius, the guy spilled the beans on their entire secret strategy. They were going to lure monsters over to pick off the nobles one by one. Thanks to this dude with the loose lips, their whole plan was shot. Ricky now had the full, ridiculous picture. He finally understood why there were so many more farm kids in the exam this year. They needed the extra bodies for this harebrained scheme. That's when the princess with the flashy red crest chimed in, saying these farmers knew all about how much bears are into blood. Then she dropped the mic, revealing she was actual royalty, which left the farmers completely shook. In her royal opinion, it was a pretty terrible look for future protectors to be using such scummy tactics to take out their own classmates. She gave the official order for Ricky to basically dismantle every single one of them and put them in timeout. As for the guy who cooked up this whole plan, using monster instincts to hurt other students, that person was about to get a very personal investigation from the royal family. So, to sum it up, Rashal was in deep, deep trouble. Anyway, Ricky went full-on Gojo mode, whipped out his sword, and got down to business. A flurry of slashes later, and pretty much everyone in his way was down for the count. The pathetic nerd finally realized they were completely out of options, so he decides to double down on the blood strategy. 3 of his cronies try to mess up Ricky's crisp outfit, but before a single drop could touch him, it just stopped midair, blocked by an invisible shield, while the swordsman just gave them a look that said, Really, guys? Rashal's day just kept getting worse. He couldn't figure out why the blood was just hanging there like a weird decoration. Turns out, it was a shield from the princess, who demanded they surrender immediately. She basically announced that their strategy was a total flop. Watching all this unfold, Ella was just standing there, utterly amazed. She literally didn't have to lift a finger thanks to her superpowered teammates, while the head nerd looked like he was about to short-circuit. He started screaming that this was their last chance to pass, trying to fire up his crew by saying if they got caught, it was game over. Rashal then went full-on self-sabotage mode again, and cut his own hand for more bait, and the other kids, seeing no way out, followed his lead. They finally realized there was nowhere to run. Watching the sad spectacle, the princess almost felt bad for them for trying so hard, but then again, there was that lingering smell of deer blood. Well, great. They've managed to attract a welcoming committee of bears. And by that, I mean Ella spots at least 4 of these fuzzy nightmares heading right for them. She's clearly never seen one of these big boys up close before, and looking at its grumpy face, she's having a real, uh-oh, are these things dangerous? Moment. But in front of this furry apocalypse, Ricky stands there cool as a cucumber and just whips out his wind blade ability. He proceeds to one-shot all 4 bears with his sword. It's so bonkers that even the little nerd is left speechless. Ella's brain is still buffering what she just saw, completely silent, while Ricky starts monologuing about how their little plan was never gonna work. It's finally dawning on her that the kid standing in front of her is playing on a completely different server than everyone else. Rashal and his little posse get rounded up, and Ricky starts playing bad cop, grilling him for info on TN, since he knows they were teamed up. The smug little nerd cracks a grin, realizing both brothers are in the mix, and he just loves telling them Urian and TN have been permanently deleted. He's just trashing them, saying how they're low-level scrubs compared to their siblings. In fact, the little punk even adds that the bear is probably enjoying a 5-course meal right about now, which sends Ella into a full-blown panic for Urian. The princess doesn't skip a beat and basically tells Ricky to go be a hero already. Poor Ella is losing it and just wants to run off. But the princess gives her a hard no. Ella gives her the "are you kidding me" look, and the princess just fires back the ultimate death glare. See, the princess totally gets it. She knows what it's like to lose someone, but she also knows Ella would just be a human-shaped speed bump for Ricky. Meanwhile, Rochelle's just over there in the corner, enjoying the drama like she's watching a movie. 'Cause let's be real, if what that little weasel said is true, this whole place is about to turn into a total disaster zone. The monsters are gonna sniff out all that, spilled juice and come running. We could be talking dozens of bears showing up, which is a major party foul. Look, Ricky is built different, he can handle it. Ella, on the other hand, would be the classic escort mission NPC that just gets in the way. That's why the princess is telling her to trust the main character and just stay put. The whole thing sucks, and you can see the heartbreak all over Urian's sister's face. But she finally agrees to wait, and we smash cut to Ricky doing a full-on Naruto run through the woods until he finally spots his sister. She's out cold, clutching a jawbone for some reason. Then, Ricky sees some other guy and slams on the brakes. It's him, but he's rocking a helmet. Urian is over here wondering why Rashal isn't grabbing the jawbone, while Ricky immediately clocks the kid's shady black emblem, then looks at his unconscious sister. Putting 2 and 2 together and getting 5, Ricky assumes Helmet Boy knocked his sister out, so he charges in, sword first, while Urian just casually This completely fries Ricky's circuits. The same attack that just turned 4 bears into confetti got stopped? And now this dude is lecturing him? He's saying something about how sucker punches are a bad look, but all Ricky can think is, holy cow, this guy's got insane reflexes. Tien's brother is all like, you really think you're walking away after messing with my sister? Especially since his sword is all glowy with magic. So yeah, it's way stronger than a normal sword. Our boy Urian is desperately trying to call a timeout, yelling that this is a huge misunderstanding, and he didn't do anything to her. For real, he just wanted to talk. But Ricky's overprotective brother instincts have gone into overdrive and he is not listening to reason. He unleashes his wind move, and a massive slash just annihilates the scenery. The attack is so ridiculously fast that even Urian is shocked. He manages to dodge it, but just barely, and he's like, dude, you need to chill, your attacks are seriously not cool. In a mess like this, Tien's brother puts first things first and throws up a windshield around his sister to keep her safe. In a total big bro to the rescue moment, Ian's brother throws up a windy force field to shield his sister. Then he starts shouting at the guy in the bucket helmet. Ricky clocks that he's just some commoner and figures Urian probably isn't one of those remnant weirdos. Still, our boy Matrix dodging 2 of his attacks is so impressive that Ricky actually decides to share his name. He puffs out his chest, announcing he's the eldest son of the Count's family, and brags about having a wind spirit on his payroll. You know, really trying to sell the whole main character vibe. Urian is just dying of secondhand embarrassment from that cringy intro. It's so bad he totally blanks on his own secret identity for a second. And he accidentally introduces himself as Yuri Sungung, and get this, Ricky says the ridiculous name like it's real, and then asks one final question. Putting on his scariest "I'm gonna mess you up" face, the swordsman demands to know who dared to mess with his precious little sister. Our hero is getting real tired of all this wind magic, and as he thinks back, he realizes, yeah, a bear definitely wasn't what knocked her out. It was Urian himself. And the problem is, confessing this to her super angry brother, who's looking for any excuse to go medieval on someone, is a terrible idea. Naturally, this just makes Ricky even more furious, so he whips up a mini tornado and coldly promises to turn that helmet into a tin can. At this point, Urian realizes he just poured gasoline on the fire instead of putting it out, but honestly, he doesn't have time for this drama. He's on a mission for some monster teeth, so he tries to call a truce, basically yelling, "Let's chat later," as he makes a run for it. Watching him peel out at superhuman speed has Ricky's jaw on the floor, making him wonder if he's fighting an actual mid-level knight. Or maybe someone even tougher, not that it matters, because Ricky's convinced he's already figured out the guy's entire fighting style, so he zips in for what he thinks is the final blow. His sword, a blur of motion, just inches away from bonking Urian right on the helmet. Ricky's feeling pretty smug, with the god-tier confidence of a guy who's absolutely certain there's no way in heck his opponent can dodge this. But plot twist. Urian just pulls a Houdini and vanishes into thin air. Poof, gone. Ricky's standing there looking totally baffled, and just as he's thinking, where'd he go? Our boy sneaks up and delivers a classic karate chop to the back of his neck. He drops him in one hit, then leans in to reveal he's been playing Ricky the whole time, with some mind-bending illusions. He basically made him fight his own shadow. Anyway, hard cut. We're back at the academy. The entrance exam is finally over, and they're making an announcement about the unfortunate incident where a few students got, totally sabotaged. Turns out they were set up with monsters. But thankfully, the princess stepped in and promised to bring the hammer down on the culprits. The royal family is now on the case, and the principal has rounded up all the teachers for a little what the heck happened meeting. He's giving them all a pat on the back, and most of the teachers are pretty jazzed about the talent pool in this year's exam. But of course, there's always one. This teacher, Jerry, totally rains on G's parade, arguing that the rich kids and the poor kids just can't stop bickering with each other. G thinks Jerry's comment was way out of line. She calls him out for looking down on students from humble beginnings, but this smug dude just shrugs it off like he couldn't care less. Then he spills the tea, saying the school is basically a playground for the nobles to do whatever they want, all because some big-shot sage said so. Hearing her dad's name get dragged into it was the last straw. G absolutely loses it on him until the principal has to step in and tell them both to chill. He passes the mic to his assistant, who wraps things up by announcing that a grand total of 29 candidates made the cut. And just when the guy was about to drop the top 10 names, bam! We cut to the kids, all staring at the results board like their lives depended on it. Big surprise, number 1 went to the shiniest person in the room, Princess Saruti, while second place was snagged by Ricky from the Wind Tribe, who was totally bummed his buddy Yuri Sungsun didn't make the cut, and third place went to some wildcard named Jade, a so-called magical swordsman. Tying for fourth and fifth are the twin sisters, Sia and Mu, who are looking way too smug. Probably thought they had first place in the bag. Rolling into sixth place is Ella, our favorite red-headed commoner, who looks like she just won the lottery for even getting on the list. At the same time, she's freaking out about where Urian vanished to, while seventh place went to that world-class jerk, Chris, who was absolutely fuming that a peasant outscored him. My man's ego is so fragile, he immediately jumped to, she must have cheated. Anyway, eighth place belongs to some tough-looking character named Rizzo, who looks seriously ticked off just for being there. In ninth, we have Princess Saruti's number 1 fangirl, Hina, and finally, 10th place goes to Emo Hair Guy, also known as Goliath, which, let's be real, is a million times cooler than a name like Chris. Now for the honorable mentions who didn't crack the top 10. Coming in at 24th is Tian, who's just happy to be here, folks, even while cheering on her bro for snagging second. But she was seriously stressed about Urian. And speak of the devil, we finally find our little murder hobo, sweating buckets and realizing he completely bombed it. You heard that right. He didn't just fail, he failed spectacularly, after all that talk about how he was a shoo-in. Guess his performance in the first 2 tests really came back to bite him. Anyway, Ella immediately scrambles over to his side. After hearing he got tangled up in some kind of trap, she wanted to chase after him, but then things got complicated. Her little bro plays it cool, telling her he's fine, and totally deflects by putting the spotlight back on his big sis. He's all hyped up about her landing in 6th, especially since a top 10 spot comes with some seriously sweet perks. Ella's thrilled, but she's convinced it was just a fluke and then drops a bombshell. She's not going to enroll. Urian's jaw hits the floor when she suggests they just try again next year. Since their whole deal was all or nothing, we enroll together. And this sweet sibling moment is totally ruined by the sound of Chris's hyena laugh, who is absolutely loving this drama. The doofus just keeps cackling. Even as Urian and Ella stare at him like he's grown a second head, Chris finally stops, and for a second you think, oh, maybe he gets it now. But nope. This clown starts wheezing like a deflating balloon, and 2 seconds later he's laughing so hard, Urian looks like he's about to introduce his fist to Chris's face. But let's zip back to the main office, where G is throwing an absolute fit after seeing the final results. The principal is completely clueless, like, what's the problem? Everything looks fine to me. But the wizard teacher fires back that she couldn't care less about the top 10 list. The only name she cares about is Urian, who totally tanked the exam, even though he's supposed to be Ella's super talented little brother. Apparently, he flunked because they suspect he didn't actually take down that bear, a fact confirmed by our resident knockoff Aizawa. He basically said the kid's sword skills are a joke compared to his sister's, but that's exactly when G jumps in with his 2 cents, insisting that Urian's magical potential is actually off the charts. Then, out of nowhere, some assistant bursts in yelling about an emergency and announces that one more candidate is getting in after all. This, of course, gets every single wannabe student's hopes up, making them all wonder if they're about to win the golden ticket. And in a twist that absolutely floored everyone, Urian's name gets called for the Magic Major, sending Chris and his goon squad into another full-blown meltdown. They're completely losing it that some farm boy got in over them. Meanwhile, Ella is just ecstatic for her little brother because now they can finally go to school together. No drama there, but our boy is still trying to process the whiplash from what just went down and figure out how it even happened. Let's cut back to the office, where G is going to bat for Urian, arguing he's a kid with some seriously massive potential. She pointed out the kid's magical power is so juiced it can wreck their equipment, but that's not even the half of it. What she saw in that split second was Urian actively throttling his own power so nobody else would get zapped, which means the kid has a level of bonkers control over his skills. She argues that not letting a kid like that in would be a colossal screw-up for the kingdom. Meanwhile, the super strict teacher is totally against letting Urian in, hammering home the point that TN was the one who saved his bacon in the exam. Based on the reports, he says the kid has 0 practical skills, which would make him a total liability in the long run. But G isn't backing down an inch, firing back that the only place for a student like him to get some hands-on experience is the Magic Academy. She's convinced if they just let him in, he could become the greatest of all time, the GOAT, the Academy has ever produced. Of course, hearing this, Jerry the Snob is practically scoffing, looking down his nose at the lower class and thinking the whole idea is ridiculous. Ranting about letting a charity case into their prestigious school, he starts yelling at the professor, convinced she's the one being unfair. He's not worthy of being here. And once again, the principal lets out a roar so loud it probably made his assistant's ears bleed. He declares that the Magic Academy is a fantastic sanctuary for talented students, no matter where they come from. And with that, he's officially on Team G, saying she's one of the most legit heroic witches the Academy has ever had the pleasure of knowing. The fact that a total legend like her sees something in this kid means it'd be a boneheaded move to pass on Urian. Of course, the salty look on Jerry's face says it all. He's clearly not a happy camper about this, so the principal finally plays the "I'm the boss" card to officially accept Urian as a magic major under special admission. At the same time, though, he slaps on one seriously strict condition. If the kid can't pull off some quality results within the deadline, he's getting the boot for not making the cut. But who cares about that now? Ella and Urian are celebrating like there's no tomorrow, while poor Ricky Bro is still sulking over Yuri Sung Sung and is actually comparing that kid's height to Urian's, thinking they're basically the same size. All of a sudden, it hits our boy. This is the same swordsman he threw down with in the bear trial, the one he totally owned. This is an absolute nightmare scenario for Urian, because this dude is the one person who's dangerously close to sniffing out his secret. But the swordsman just turns away, remembering Urian's pathetic sword test results and figuring he's way weaker than the guy he actually fought. Ella has no idea what just transpired, while our boy is just thanking his lucky stars that the whole thing didn't blow up in his face. The next day, the 10 top students, plus the special admits, are all heading to the advanced classes. It's officially their first day at the academy, and Ella is a nervous wreck. The second they push open the door, their jaws drop at the sight of a ridiculously fancy room where all the top-tier kids are just chilling in their seats, including the princess, Ricky, and the rest of the A-listers. Some of them immediately spot the common folk wandering in, while Ella is so starstruck she has absolutely no clue where they're supposed to park themselves. Urian, on the other hand, feels excited about the idea of receiving education in his new world. Although, of course, he understands that the educational standards for this era will be much less advanced. Compared to the tech world he came from, a man comes right after them, and it's the mass murderer Rizzo, who orders them to move. Ella quickly lets him through while our boy begins to wonder if this guy will become a bully in class. Seeing Rizzo arrive, Chris raised the issue of him being late, barking at him for having lower standards than those who usually show up earlier. The problem is, this crazy guy really doesn't care and simply calls Chris a jerk, bragging about his status. The blonde noble reminded him that he was a rank above Rizzo, giving him immediate power to look down on him and order him not to be late. From now on, as you might expect, Rizzo was shocked for a moment and questioned whether Chris was confident in his strength. Just because he was a rank higher, the guy stood up in front of him and promised the blonde noble that he was ready to prove his true abilities beyond the scope of a simple test. In fact, Rizzo was ready to bury Chris underground for that. This was the first day, and the situation was already this tense. Even Ella was noticing their argument without paying attention. Yuri remained calm and advised them to take their seats, while the rest of the advanced class members, Hina, Jade, and Goliath, also observed the scene. Jade, the shining blue-haired boy, was excited to see our duo for some reason. Nonetheless, the siblings made themselves comfortable in the plush seats. And feeling at ease, Jade happily welcomed them with an open heart. In response, Ella also shared her name. Although she was quite formal about it, the Charisma Prince assured her there was no need to act stiff like their classmates. He even admired the commoners in some aspect. Since this was the first time in the school's history that a commoner sat in an advanced class, while they were talking, Urian had a hard time holding back his laughter. Internalizing that Jade was really trying too hard, the third-ranked student shifted his attention to greet his buddy, doing so politely and humorously. Urian gave him a free pass by revealing that he wasn't even Ella's biological brother. For some reason, that remark genuinely angered him, breaking Jade's composure as he clenched his fists and praised Ella for her talent in sword fighting, even though he could admire her. Jade found himself annoyed by Urian's abilities, wondering how the kid could keep up with the advanced class. Our buddy just smiled back at him. At that moment, the entire place was buzzing with heated arguments going on. In the next scene, we see the siblings walking back, talking about how they hardly did anything on their first day. Urian understood that their real classes would start tomorrow, so he was truly looking forward to this experience, while his sister was lost in thought, admiring that they were finally at their dream school. She wanted both of them to share a great time together until their other siblings could catch up. Their sweet conversation was interrupted by a group of upperclassmen bullying, mocking the commoners for being here. I can't imagine how these two got into the school, to the point where those damn nobles wonder if the standards for this year's exam will be lowered, of course, while they're saying this right in front of our buddy. Urian couldn't help but feel satisfied seeing the upperclassmen thugs looking down on the character of hidden strength a second-year student. The thugs remind the freshmen to greet them properly like the upperclassmen do, and Ella appears extremely anxious, trying to greet them while protecting her little brother. But these thugs don't really care about a simple greeting. Instead, they make an unreasonable demand for the girl to strip off her clothes. Because she doesn't deserve noble attire, one of the thugs grabs our buddy, trying his best to intimidate him. But get this, no matter how hard this dude grunts and strains, he can't even budge Urian. The guy's brain is short-circuiting trying to figure out how this little kid is apparently made of lead. Meanwhile, Urian's just staring back with this adorable, totally unbothered smile, like he's watching a puppy try to chew a tire. Just then, Jade comes sprinting in like he's in an action movie. Ella starts laying into these second-year goons, basically telling them this isn't some high school clique and to stop being jerks, all while trying to rescue her brother. Jade, who's clearly enjoying this train wreck a little too much, strolls up to the upperclassmen and puts on his best pretty please face, asking them to let the freshmen go. He tells them they're making the whole academy look bad, which apparently triggers these second years, because the main meathead actually hauls off and smacks Ella right across the face. Jade's jaw hits the floor seeing a girl get hit like that, but for Urian, oh man, that's the switch. You can practically see the smoke coming out of his ears because he just can't process how this pack of losers had the nerve to lay a hand on his sister. And speaking of powerful people, let's cut to a meeting with someone who's basically a final boss. Meet Haiwan, the academy's resident superstar, and the teacher in charge of the advanced class. The principal is basically her #1 fan, super thankful for everything she does. Haiwan's just like, whatever, it's not like I'm busy, and her Ice Queen vibe just makes the principal laugh. He then spills some tea, revealing that this year's advanced class might just be the most legendary batch the school has ever seen. Instantly, our sharp-as-a-tack teacher connects the dots and realizes he's talking about the Wonder siblings. Naturally, a bunch of snooty nobles threw a fit about it, but the kids got special admission anyway. Ella totally earned her spot. By the way, the girl's a beast with a sword. Turns out, she was subconsciously channeling mana into her blade, which is insane. Of course, if she'd been born with a silver spoon, she'd have gotten in with zero complaints. The principal is all for it. But what really gets Haiwan's attention is the talk about Ella's brother, the one who supposedly has zero potential. Funny enough, G was singing a totally different tune, hyping the kid up but being super vague about his actual skills. And even with that cryptic endorsement, the principal went ahead and gave him special student status anyway, which just screams that he's playing some 4D chess with the academy's future. Sensing her skepticism, the principal throws a curious question at his resident hero. He's like, "Hey, you think this system is actually working? Because this place is supposed to be about finding talent, not just being a country club for the rich. But in reality, the nobles are just using it to level up their own power." He basically says if they don't fix this mess, the whole kingdom is going to go down the toilet. This gets Haiwan thinking about how, since she was a kid, the only thing she's ever known is how to throw down. She was the absolute best in the business, so she decided to put her faith in the principal's master plan for shaking things up. And right on cue, she points out the window where, clear as day, Urian is getting hassled by one of the big shots. The principal freaks out and is about to jump out the window to stop it. But Haiwan, ever the curious cat, holds him back, basically saying, "Hold up, let's grab some popcorn and see what happens." After all, she's dying to see what this secret potential the principal's been hyping up is all about. Back at the brawl, the smug upperclassman has just decked Ella, leaving Urian and Jade completely stunned. That's all it takes for the little brother to snap and break free. He bolts over to his sister while Jade, the number 3 ranked dude, tags in to take his spot. He tells Urian to get his sister to the nurse's office because playtime was officially over. He was about to school these arrogant punks by dragging them straight to the office. Getting called a bunch of jerks sets one of them off. But here's the kicker. The big, brawny dude who started this whole thing is suddenly looking terrified. He's completely stunned, trying to figure out how that kid just Houdini'd his way out of his grip in the blink of an eye. Urian just stares at his sister's bloody face. See, when that 5th-year psycho attacked Ella, he actually juiced up his punch with mana, which is a completely unhinged thing to do to a first year. Urian was itching to turn that dude into a pretzel for messing with his sister, but his super secret powers had to stay on the down low. The throwdown between the super cocky Grant and Jade kicks off, and the big lug is absolutely floored that this scrawny kid, who looks like a stiff breeze could knock him over, is holding his own. But for whatever reason, the little guy is packing some serious heat. Totally stumped, the jerk yells for his buddy Nigel to cheat with some magic. Convinced their entire upperclassman street cred is on the line, some sophomore genius is about to whip out his little magic wand. While Jade is busy reciting the school rulebook about not zapping people on campus, Urian just casually tells him, "Scoot over, I got this." While he's also casually fixing up his sister, Jade is begging him to run for the hills. But then Urian drops a bombshell that leaves everyone's jaws on the floor. Oh yeah, she's all healed up. So, no biggie, right? Except the word healed just short-circuited everyone's brains, including the principal, who's now doing a fantastic impression of a goldfish. Ella's eyes finally flutter open to her brother saying, "You're good, sis," which, naturally, makes you start wondering, could it be that Urian just pulled off that stunt with zero nasty side effects? To get the inside scoop, let's take a peek inside his brain. Turns out he's got a whole secret technique for hiding his power, which is hilarious because the tough senior students are practically quaking in their boots. The second they saw his magical first aid kit in action, they were ready to throw in the towel. One of them gets curious and asks if the principal is going to snag that kid for some VIP training now that he knows about the healing power, even though we all know that's not even close to the real story. For some reason, our boy can't figure out why everyone is staring at him like he just grew a second head, and Jade is completely speechless. He's stammering, asking how Ella is perfectly fine, and Urian just tries to explain it like, I just fixed her? It's clear he has no idea what a big deal healing magic is here, so let's hit pause for a quick explainer. Healing magic is basically the ultimate way to patch up boo-boos. But here's the catch. Even for the absolute wizards of the craft, it takes at least 5 to 15 minutes to work, even on a good day. They couldn't pull it off in under 5 minutes if their lives depended on it. And then there's Urian, who just demonstrated instant healing. Right in front of a live audience, no less. This is when the uh-oh moment hits him like a ton of bricks. Suddenly, even Nigel is giving Urian an impressed nod while his buddy is fuming. And funnily enough, Jade is also feeling a bit salty. He's miffed because this guy is stealing the spotlight and trying to look cool for Ella, our glorious queen. Just then, a new challenger approaches the scene. She shuts the whole brawl down instantly. Everyone's wondering if she teleported, but it seems Urian knew all along that someone was creeping on them from the sidelines. This lady has her eyes locked on our boy, even with her Ice Queen demeanor. She can't help but crack a tiny smile at the talented new recruits this year, so she decides not to punish them. I guess it's because they're still in the welcome to school phase. So, the bully gets a get-out-of-jail-free card and is already plotting his villainous comeback tour. The scene flips to the ridiculously fancy dorm where both Ella and Urian landed a spot in the advanced class. Our boy is bouncing off the walls like a hyperactive puppy. He's grinning like a fool, while Ella's feeling a bit down in the dumps. She had absolutely no clue her brother was hiding this much raw talent, especially that whole instant healing trick, which is basically a legend. Urian, of course, is doing his best to just whistle and look the other way. He's playing dumb about how special his skill is, and the poor girl is starting to feel like the sidekick in her own brother's superhero story. She's worried they'll eventually drift apart because he's on a whole other level. Her sad fest is making Urian super uncomfortable. But Ella decides to shake it off, assuring him she's going to hit the books hard from now on. After all, they both made it into the Smarty Pants class together. And just like that, they pinky swore to stick together till the bitter end. Hearing his sister's pep talk, Urian was all in, ready to level up together. Flash forward to the next day, and who's standing at the front of the class but he won, giving the new kids the once-over and dropping the bomb that she's their new teacher. Kina's jaw basically hit the floor, totally starstruck by the teacher's looks, while Goliath was starting to realize this advanced class was no joke. Urian's brain was doing backflips. The same woman from yesterday was now their teacher, and she was kicking things off as their instructor. She was reminding them how plush and comfy their rooms were going to be, since everything is super luxurious and only for the advanced class cool kids. Which is a fancy way of saying that if you're not in the club, you don't get any of the cool toys. But wait, there's more. We're talking snazzy outfits, gourmet food, and getting to use all the best facilities whenever they feel like it. The whole thing is basically a prize for getting into the advanced class. And as long as they stay in, they get to keep living the high life. No problems whatsoever. Until she dropped the other shoe, a little thing she called the demotion system. This so-called demotion system is basically a trapdoor. Any student who doesn't make the grade gets yeeted out of the advanced class. And that means getting sent back to the minors, because these seats are reserved for the absolute best. Even crazier, not a single student managed to keep their spot in the advanced class for the entire year last year. In other words, graduating from this class is pretty much impossible. While some kids look terrified, Urian was just getting hyped to see how it all plays out. Their teacher starts the first class, begins writing on the board, and our boy just about loses his mind when he sees what he won. Has apparently written. Okay, let's break down the rules for the advanced class. See, they've got this grading system called Excellent Evaluation, and it's based on a straight-up score, not some lame curve, so the number of students in the class can change willy-nilly, and it usually just gets smaller over time. The students in the advanced class get all this special support and a guaranteed sweet job right after graduation. I mean, that's the dream, right? But at the same time, the second their grades start to slip, it's absolute chaos. Because they're immediately kicked back down to a regular class. All the bragging rights and cool points they'd get from the elite class just vanish like a fart in the wind. And like he already said, the number of kids who actually graduate from this class is a big fat zero. This means our hero, who's supposed to be flying under the radar, has a snowball's chance in heck of ever graduating from here. But let's not sweat the small stuff and get back to the teacher's writing. The kids are totally floored because their first class is literally just basic math. We're talking doubling numbers here. This makes Chris look like he's seen a ghost as he begs to ask a question. The poor kid nervously asks, why the heck they have to learn math in this super prestigious academy where it's all about magic and swords? To that, the teacher with the mesmerizing eyes asks, why he even cares about learning magic in the first place. The golden-haired noble boy says he wants to be a powerful wizard, just like her, so he can help the kingdom someday. It's the perfect cookie-cutter answer, and the teacher is like, yeah, sure, I'll buy that. But there was a massive hole in the kid's logic. The thing is, getting stronger in this world isn't just about mana or sword swinging. It's also about the most powerful weapon of all. Knowledge. If someone can pack their brain with enough info, they can totally shatter their old limits. Naturally, this idea is flying about a mile over these students' heads. They still aren't getting the memo. So, to show them what she means, Hewan conjures a tiny little fire spell on the tip of her finger. Wondering aloud how to make it bigger, the most predictable answer comes from Chris, who tells her to just pump more mana into it. But when Hewan does, that tiny flicker erupts into a full-blown pillar of fire. The teacher's all, yep, that's what most rookies would do, and explains that's the basic, boring approach. Meanwhile, Chris is preening like he just won the Nobel Prize. Then the teacher keeps going, hitting them with a pop quiz. So what happens if you're running on empty and can't just dump more mana into it? She puts poor Hina on the spot, who nervously squeaks out that if you're low on juice, you gotta phone a friend and have other mages help out. But that's a huge problem. Hyewon's thinking this is a terrible plan because relying on other people is the fastest way to get wrecked. The real pro gamer move to get a bigger fire spell is to actually mix it with a wind spell, which she shows off with some serious flair. You take those two dinky little spells, mash them together, and boom, you get a fire vortex that's way stronger than just brute forcing it with more mana. It's all thanks to magic physics. Fire and wind are basically best buds, or as our resident nerd Urian would say, it's elemental synergy. It's a straight-up combustion reaction, people. This is the power you get when you actually know why things work. A top-tier mage can't just rely on the instruction manual, so she taps the board, basically saying, use your brains, not just your mana batteries. Hyewon then preps them for their first little test. Cue the montage of frantic scribbling until the teacher finally yells, pencils down! Next up, she's grading on the spot. And surprise, surprise, a grand total of 3 students actually aced the thing. This hits Chris right in the ego, as the devastating realization dawns that he is not, in fact, one of the perfect scorers. Of course, there's Princess Saruthi, whose perfect score makes her #1 fan practically faint. The second one is Rizzo, which is a total shocker. Yeah, the goofball sitting right next to Chris. It's hilarious because this guy usually has, like, 2 brain cells fighting for 3rd place, and yet, there's no freaking way a dude like him got a perfect score. Chris is sweating bullets as Rizzo just materializes behind him like a horror movie villain. And he sneers, wondering if the little blonde noble failed to get a perfect score, the same so-called role model who couldn't even show up on time. This from the clown who ranked 7th, by the way. Rizzo leaves Chris with a chilling little reminder that the class rankings get a hard reset every month. And even though he claims he doesn't care about rankings, he totally makes Chris panic and tells him to get good for next time. Man, he just got publicly executed. Hyewon lets the tension simmer for a second before announcing Urian as the final student with a perfect score. You can practically hear the jaws of the other nobles hit the floor, but this completely wigs Chris out. His own sister is floored, while our boy Urian is just sitting there smirking like he's the main villain. He's acting like he just solved quantum mechanics or something, smugly remembering how he was a total brainiac back in his high school days. For him, this little quiz was a total cakewalk. He's thinking he's about to breeze through the academic part of this school while the rich kids, like Jade, are now staring at Urian like he's the new final boss they have to beat. Their teacher then starts wrapping up the test. She announces it's time for the loot drop, holding up a seriously cool badge before casting a copy-paste spell. And then she just magically yeets the badges right onto their desks, telling them to slap them on their uniforms. Turns out, this badge is an all-access VIP pass to every facility in the school. And the first perk is the super exclusive dining hall for the advanced class. For regular folks like Urian and Ella, who are used to being broke, this is basically like winning the Powerball. We see them absolutely demolishing a 5-star meal, looking happier than they've ever been just to be part of the Smart Kids Club. Forget magic and glory. These two are now dead, set on staying in the advanced class just for the free, gourmet food. The siblings make a pact to keep their grades up for the grub, to keep their grades from totally bombing. Right after lunch, their next class is literally monster hunting, taught by none other than Hyewon. Apparently, this class is a super big deal, and will pretty much decide their academic fate. If they mess up, they're getting knocked down a peg. Ella, bursting with main character energy, is dead set on snagging first place because, let's be honest, she has no other option. She's this close to giving up Gordon Ramsay's cooking. Meanwhile, our hero points out that the first years are way too new at this to be hunting monsters by themselves. So, she brought in some backup in the form of some 5th-year students to help them out on this little field trip. And guess who it is? The exact same clowns who were messing with Yuri and Ella before. What a small, annoying world. Hyewon then explains that teamwork is a huge part of the grade, which is just the worst possible news for Urian. He can already see his GPA taking a nosedive. The smug upperclassmen welcome the newbies, going on and on about how important teamwork is. These geniuses also threaten to snitch on the freshmen if they step out of line, which would wreck their scores. It's safe to say our trio is not exactly hyped for this exam. It's so bad that even Jade has to apologize to Urian and Ella, telling them to basically stick to him like glue. And even though being stuck with these goons feels awful, they have to suck it up to stay in the class. The red-haired girl feels the same way, but she's also giving this terrible duo the side-eye, because it's painfully obvious they're plotting something to ruin their scores. Our boy can't even stand watching them laugh from a distance, vowing to protect his precious grades. But then, a brilliant idea pops into his head. He walks up, calling them his seniors, and casually suggests they make a little bet. This is a pretty gutsy and insulting move from a freshman, and the arrogant upperclassmen think he's a total joke, but Urian just keeps pushing their buttons. He doubles down, promising they're about to show them what they're really made of. Urian is more than ready to put on a performance. One of the seniors, clearly triggered, grabs a barrel of weapons and just chucks it at them, telling them to gear up. Surprise, it's time for a friendly sparring match. And if the freshmen actually manage to beat the upperclassmen, they'll finally get some respect. The intimidating one then tries to scare them, adding that they're using real weapons for this. So if they get a little dinged up, it's totally their own fault. After all, a teacher can't possibly know if a student got hurt by another person or just a random monster, right? Totally adds a fun new layer of danger. At first, Urian pretends to be a shy little kid. He acts totally freaked out about having to fight them. Nigel is loving the show, thinking their fear is hilarious. All three first years look absolutely terrified, but it's all an act. This showdown is exactly what they wanted from the very beginning. In reality, Ella is practically buzzing with excitement to grab a sword and get started. Forgetting all their tough guy threats, the upperclassmen realize they've been played and are now so mad they're ready to throw down for real. In the next scene, the fight kicks off between Ella and the same loser who jumped her last time, but plot twist, she's totally holding her own. And it's not just because she can pump her sword full of mana. Urian's sister is just still ticked off that she couldn't protect her brother before. She got too flustered and froze up last time, and that's exactly why she refuses to let herself slip up today. Not happening. Some big dude starts begging Nigel for a protection spell, so the wizard quickly casts something called *** Super Armor ***. It's basically a massive power-up, but while Nigel is distracted playing support, Jade zips in from behind, and with one clean swing, snaps the magic staff in half. Nigel is just standing there, scared and confused, until he sees Jade pull out this unbelievably cool-looking sword. I'm not kidding, that sword is awesome. The level 3 freshman makes his sword disappear back into the shadows and gives his seniors a little tip. He reminds them that it's probably a good idea to always take out the wizard first in a fight, which means the big ugly dude is now the last one standing and completely cornered. So the big tough guy suddenly got a case of the jitters and tried to take a pot shot at Urian, but the second he moved, Ella was like, "Nope, not today, buddy." This clown comes barreling towards our mysterious kid, who doesn't even flinch, just cracks a smile while Urian lets out this little puff of spooky, dark energy. Which, of course, scared the big lug so bad he froze solid. But plot twist. Before Urian could even enjoy his moment, a giant monster just pops out of nowhere and decides to crash the party, and Urian is completely clueless. The monster's going in for the kill shot on Urian, but right on cue, big sis Ella swoops in to save her little bro from becoming monster chow. Naturally, she takes the hit for him, getting herself seriously messed up. The monster leaves this gnarly gash on her, which really ticked off the rest of the crew. That was Jade's cue to go full-on anime protagonist, whipping out the second form of his demon sword. And let me tell you, that thing morphed into something absolutely nuts. He one-shotted the creature, basically turning its skull into confetti all over the floor, all while Mr. High and Mighty just stood there with his jaw on the ground. The dude just could not compute how some rookie freshman just deleted that monster with a single swing. And just when he thought things couldn't get crazier, he sees the farm girl who was supposedly on death's door getting patched up by her brother, Urian, like he was just slapping on a band-aid. That whole instant heal trick left him absolutely floored. It was at that moment the jerk finally got a taste of what it's like to play in the big leagues. Suddenly all humble, the big oaf admitted he lost the bet and promised they'd stop being such a pain in the neck from now on. But of course, the giant meathead still had beef with Urian, claiming the only reason he's special is because of his magic first aid kit. Then Nigel, not wanting to be left out, chimed in with his own 2 cents, yapping about how the white-haired kid would be totally useless otherwise. All their trash talk was starting to get on Ella's last nerve, but Urian couldn't care less. I mean, hey, progress is progress, right? Meanwhile, let's zip on over to He-1, who's dropping the bomb that this whole test was never supposed to be a team-building exercise. From the get-go, she was basically venting about the sophomore teachers, who were all acting like they ran the whole show. Then, at the last second, Hywin was like, "Oh really? Is that how it works? You guys can just snap your fingers and change things?" Back in the classroom they were all, "Oh, just trust the second years. They'll be a fantastic help to the freshmen, we promise." But she was still mulling it over, because let's be real, a boring theory class suddenly turning into a monster-slaying field trip is just a tad suspicious. And on top of that, these clowns were trying to pull the, "Oh, you're new here" card on her, as if she was born yesterday. Hwan, who saw right through their little game, played along with a big ol' smile, saying how glad she was that her students were totally safe with such reliable upperclassmen. The best they could muster was some super awkward laughter, which pretty much told her everything she needed to know, and she was not a fan. The fact that these bozos were planning to mess with her kids got her thinking about redecorating the room with them, right as Hywin let just a tiny bit of her power leak out. You know, just enough to own the room and make the other teachers start shaking in their boots. For now though, Hywon decided to let it go. She was kinda curious to see how this dumpster fire would play out. And hey, she trusted her kids to handle themselves. Now, back to our regularly scheduled monster hunt. So, the big goon hauls Jade off to meet the head honcho, making sure none of the normies tagged along. Something about this whole thing was giving our demon sword user the creeps. He still had no clue why he got singled out for this private meeting. And sitting there was some smug, weird-looking kid flanked by his personal goon squad. Turns out, this kid is from the advanced sophomore class and is sitting pretty at the top of the leaderboard. Apparently, the entire second-year class is known as the Demon's Den, which is a little extra, if you ask me. And it's mostly because of this one guy, Laurel. He's the top dog who runs the whole show and basically aced the ceremony last year. Flashback to the opening ceremony, where this punk basically treated all the other nobles like they were dirt, telling them exactly how things were going to be this year. So, last year's advanced class was business as usual with the seats, right up until some absolute psycho decided to go all-out WWE on every single one of his classmates. He beat them until they were basically seeing the light. And get this, 3 out of the 9 guys he went after had to tap out but somehow still clung onto their spots in the advanced class. Everyone else got a one-way ticket to the ER, which left a whopping 4 students standing in the second-year class. And surprise, surprise, they're all Laurel's personal goon squad, each one a special kind of nasty. This whole insane story was cooking up the exact question Jade was about to ask. Like, why in the world were they all hanging out times here asterisk? But before he could, Larry snapped him back to reality. And then he started spilling the tea, saying he'd already done his homework on Jade's family history before he even showed up the kid from the legendary Demon Sword clan. Apparently, Jade's carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders, because if he flunks out of this advanced class, his entire family is headed for a total, epic, cataclysmic failure. So, let's hit the rewind button and get the juicy backstory on this kid. Turns out, his dad was the type to lose his ever-loving mind at the mere mention of using magic tools instead of a good old demon sword. He absolutely despised anyone who whipped out a mana sword and pranced around like they were hot stuff. But tough luck for him, because magic wands started popping up everywhere like trendy new coffee shops. Suddenly, any Joe Schmo could sling spells with these fancy new toys, and just like that, the demon sword family business started to tank. So, what does Dad do? He dumps all his hopes and dreams right onto his kid's shoulders. He was practically begging Jade to pull this off and graduate, because if he did, it would be like a giant neon sign to the world screaming, "Hey, the demon sword family isn't totally irrelevant yet." Yeah, Dad of the Year over here didn't bother thinking about the crushing pressure. He just shoveled all his issues onto Jade, casually mentioning that, people would probably kick the bucket. If he doesn't graduate, right now, it's game over. And somehow, the gossip king Laurel caught wind of all this drama and slid in with an offer to just let Jade graduate. This was a deal that sounded way too good to be true, and the kid was totally baffled. So, to clear things up, Laurel started laying out the fine print. He said the advanced class is basically a reality show for some folks with bottomless pockets and crazy power, and these mystery billionaires are actually giving this kid a special little assignment. The mission, should he choose to accept it, make sure Larry graduates. Just do that one little thing, and these shadowy puppet masters, who are so powerful they could probably sneeze and change the weather, will handle the rest. I mean, for them, helping some kid graduate is like us deciding what to have for lunch, a total non-issue. Jade was practically buzzing to hear what Larry had to say next, and Larry, ever the businessman, cut right to the chase. He told Jade to go meet his buddies with a brand new set of instructions, and he made it super clear that this little side quest is way easier than actually trying to graduate the old-fashioned way. And hey, bonus, it'll help his family's whole demon-making business keep from going totally bankrupt. Laurel played him like a fiddle, then basically shooed him back over to his friends. With his top-secret new mission tucked away, Jade wandered back to his crew, who were all like, "Dude, are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." They were busy wondering where all the upperclassmen vanished to, completely clueless that Jade was secretly cooking up some hocus-pocus while Ella was looking the other way. And then bam! Jade whips out his demon sword and goes straight for her. Luckily, big bro Urian jumped in like a superhero at the last second to save his sister. Urian was like, "Dude, what the heck? Bad joke." But then he realized, oh wait, Jade had just trapped them in a super cool, super deadly cage made of his own swords. He then warned Urian not to get any bright ideas, because those demon blades were humming with enough juice to give you a very bad hair day. Yeah, apparently a little boop from one of those would give you a souvenir scar for life. Urian was totally floored, and even a little impressed, thinking, okay, the guy's got skills, I'll give him that. Then the kid turns to the brother-sister duo and gives them this fake apology, begging them to just freeze for a sec, because, you see, his new pals just told him he could totally yoink all their points for himself. And just like that, Jade's desperation and greed went into overdrive. He was absolutely not getting kicked out of the fancy class. And in his mind, it wasn't a huge deal for a couple of commoners pick them to have to drop out. In fact, he even promised he'd totally come back and save them right after the hunting event was over. Pinky swear. All the while, Urian was staring him down, trying to figure out what in the world was happening. And now, let's cut back to Laurel and see what kind of chaos he was cooking up. So this guy was basically giving Jade a beatdown for not following the company memo. You see, the order was to, remove all their limbs. But instead, our boy just locked him in a room and peaced out. Laurel had given him a serious knuckle sandwich and was wondering if Jade was just allergic to taking orders from the boss. Anyway, let's hit rewind for a sec. When Jade first got the assignment from Laurel, who told him to play surgeon on the new kid's arms and legs, the whole idea, understandably, freaked the kid out. But Laurel was all like, dude, relax. The seniors just really don't vibe with commoners at our school, so this is, like, a super important team-building exercise. The only job they'd gotten so far was to basically delete the commoners from the advanced class. Oh, and here's the kicker. The teachers couldn't even step in to help, because the seniors had conveniently gathered them all in another location for a teacher appreciation day. All just to pull off this psycho mission. Bottom line, Laurel wanted to get an A+ on this project, which is why he dumped the gnarliest part on Jade. The kid's got to impress the higher-ups to save his family, so the pressure's on like a ton of bricks. Which brings us back to the present, where our boy is getting pummeled for saying no thanks to his very first work order. Laurel just could not wrap his head around the freshman's feelings, wondering if he even wanted to graduate from the cool kids club. I mean, come on, he's pulling out all the stops just to save a couple of nobodies from a farm. It's so frustrating. Finally, Jade found his voice and screamed at this jerk that they weren't just farmers, they were his friends. And he gave him the full-on anime death stare. Laurel reminded him it had only been 2 days since they met, so it's not like they were braiding each other's hair or anything. At this, our edgy swordsman totally snapped, yelling that he wasn't doing it because they were best buds. It was because Ella's sword skills are absolutely insane and she totally deserves to be in the class. And as for her brother, yeah, he was kinda clumsy with a sword and magic, but one thing was obvious. The kid was wicked smart, even then. Jade was basically predicting the kid would grow up to be some kind of big-shot leader, not to mention he had that instant healing superpower. That's bound to get you some major brownie points with all the injured people in the kingdom. Honestly, Jade is a total legend in my book for being such a good hype man for his friends. He's convinced they're the future of the academy, and way more important than any noble just trying to flex their family's cash. Hearing that, Laurel actually had a split second where he thought, the kid's got a point, before immediately going back to being a total schmuck. And he promised the kid that his family's future would be nothing but doom and gloom if he kept this up, because, you don't just ghost an order from a noble like him. Jade's family would be headed straight for a total meltdown. That goes for Jade's sweet little siblings too, who were putting all their chips on their big bro's success. I gotta say, I am loving this drama. The whole I have to win for my family but I also want to be a good person thing? It's primo stuff. This is how you write a character, people. He started having flashbacks of his siblings, who just wanted to see their dad smile again. Now that Jade's off to wizarding school, their awesome older brother told them they just had to hang in there. He told them to trust him, promising he'd graduate from the elite class. All these thoughts about his family were flooding his brain, all while Laurel was using the kid's guilt trip against him, basically pulling a join me, and together we can rule the galaxy speech for this mission. If he just did it, he could put his family first, way ahead of the kingdom. I mean, his little siblings didn't deserve a crummy ending, right? In the end, Laurel laid it out plain and simple. The commoners were gonna get got one way or another, and no teachers were coming to the rescue. So, really, what was the point in fighting it? If he could just go take care of his friends, Laurel promised he'd handle the rest of the messy details. He even held out a hand to the poor kid, pitching this whole "we'll be rich and famous" fantasy like a late-night infomercial. For a hot second, it looked like Jade was gonna take the deal, but then bam, our Giga Chad hero slaps that hand away, telling that creep to take a hike because he'd never betray his crew. Dude basically said his friends are his family, end of story. And Laurel's face was priceless, totally shook that someone actually had a spine. So, you declare Jade would regret messing with you, huh? Alright. Let's roll the tape and see how that's working out for you. These second-year wannabe assassins showed up to bully some folks and, whoops, found out that Jade is basically a human bounce-back toy. But let's be real. Even Jade knows this senior is a high-level boss, and he's kinda underleveled for this fight. His only shot is to play it smart, cause there's no way he's letting these clowns win. The whole shebang is riding on him. I mean, if these goons somehow manage to KO him, they're gonna go after his buddies next, and that's a major party foul. So the drama queen noble announces he's gonna give Jade 10 pokes before he moves on to his family, and his weapon of choice? A little shiv. How original. And just like that, the fight's on. Before Jade could even blink, he felt this super weird sensation for like half a second. His opponent didn't just close the gap, he basically teleported, and Shunk stabbed Jade right in the chest, hitting the pause button on his entire body. Meanwhile, Laurel's over there monologuing, swords are cool I guess, but daggers are way more fun for, you know, making people into people kebabs. With the first poke delivered, he just yeets the freshman aside and chirps, "Hey, just 9 more to go, buddy." His goons in the background are totally geeking out, whispering about Laurel's totally OP stunlock ability. Apparently, that's his secret sauce for wrecking all the other students who wouldn't just roll over for him. Yeah, they all got totally owned. With Laurel, it's not even a fight, it's just a one-sided curb stomp session every single time. And just to be extra psycho about it, Laurel starts a 10-second countdown for the next stab, probably tapping his foot to the beat. Jade's over there trying to process that human statue feeling he got, all while the world's most stressful game show timer is ticking down. Seeing his chance, Jade pops his special move, fourth form, shadow whip, He tries to Indiana Jones the guy, but Laurel just parries it like he's swatting a fly. As the countdown hit 0, Laurel tried to pull that freeze frame trick on Jade again, landing the next stab right as he popped up from behind. He sticks him right in the upper back, and the look of pure ouch on Jade's face is apparently comedy gold for this absolute nutjob. So what's his encore? He starts another countdown while our boy is practically vibrating with pain, with the clock already near the end. This time, Jade unleashes his third form, called spear basically trying to win by spamming a bunch of pointy things at the guy. Even Laurel's fan club had to admit, the spears looked pretty sick. They were all like, whoa, this rookie's got some serious skills. But, spoiler alert, it didn't work. Laurel just sidestepped the light show and poked him again, this time painfully from behind his hand. That sent a full-body cringe of pain through him. And guess what? The psycho starts another countdown. Anyway, let's cut away from this ouch fest to Ella and Urian. Those two are still stuck in that electric sword cage, and they've both concluded that the whole exclusive points thing was total baloney. Ella's freaking out about Jade, knowing those upperclassmen are up to no good, but her brother Urian is playing it all cool. He's thinking Jade could totally handle it if it were just those same 2 clowns from before, but deep down, he's starting to get a feeling. A really, really bad vibe about this whole thing. And cut back to the main event. Our poor hero is on his knees, looking pretty wrecked, got turned into a human pincushion and flopped to the ground. And the sight was so gnarly that even the big dude was like, whoa, maybe dial it back a notch? So Larry struts over to Captain Chickenheart and is all, dude, if you're gonna keep whimpering in the corner, you can't sit with us. I mean, their whole job description was to make people unalive. So the guy starts shaking like a leaf and apologizes profusely. Meanwhile, Jade was basically one bad cough away from seeing the light. Larry was so convinced Jade was toast that he leaned in and was like, hey, just so you know, I'm gonna go take care of those farmers myself. "'Kay, thanks, bye." And Laurel's over here having a full-blown existential crisis, thinking, welp, all that hard work was for nothing, and I totally wrecked the family name. Great. Laurel's staring at this passed-out kid, just baffled, like, why, dude? Why'd you have to go so hard? You didn't just tank my family, you totally screwed yourself over too. He just keeps nagging Jade, like, come on, buddy. We can still go take out those farmers. It'll be fun. And just when you think the kid's a goner, he actually talks. Even looking like a rejected rag doll, Jade pipes up and spills the tea. Laurel's big scary power lasts for a whopping 5 seconds. Then he has to take a 10-second breather. Getting called out like that totally freaked Laurel out. But then he's like, wait, who cares? As he's literally got a knife to the guy's throat. So Laurel, being a real charmer, flips him over for a chat, which obviously hurts a ton. Jade lets out a scream that could curdle milk, but this psycho noble just couldn't compute. He's thinking, I've poked this kid full of holes, he's in agony, and he still times won't do what I say? What is his deal? The kid was offered a fast-track diploma from Super Special Awesome Academy, and he just shrugged it off, totally ghosting his family's future. It's, like, so weird that this kid gives a hoot about a bunch of regular Joes. He somehow summons the energy to flash a brave, cheeky grin. He could tell Laurel was getting antsy for his own weird reasons to keep this fight going. So while doing his best impression of a human maraca, Jade decides to drop a bombshell. He roasts Laurel for having 0 friends. Seriously, dude? No bros? No bays? In Jade's book, Laurel was the poster child for most likely to die alone. 'Cause, you know, he's got nobody in his corner. That sick burn hit a nerve, and the edgy noble lunged to give the kid a brand new piercing, right in the noggin. But then, plot twist. Laurel feels a weird vibe, and next thing you know, his knife goes flying. And it wasn't some last-ditch trick from Jade, either. Because even Jade looked totally clueless. Instead, it was his buddy, Urian, showing up like he's auditioning for a superhero movie. He zaps Jade with some instant healing magic and gives him a little chin-up, champ speech. Jade's just sitting there like, dude, did you just teleport or something? But the other advanced class nerds were totally geeking out over his insta-heal powers. Larry, on the other hand, was completely bummed out that his playtime was over. Meanwhile, Urian starts trash-talking the guy, basically promising him he's not walking away from this without a few new OEs. With a grin that screamed, "I'm about to wreck your whole day," our boy tells him to get ready for a beatdown. This just made Laurel giddy with excitement as he clutched his knife. He's thinking, this dude made a huge times mistake showing up solo, and then he hits the pause button with his special move. He zeroes in on Urian, but the kid just stands there, glowing like a nightlight and basically giving off a come at me, bro vibe. The kid doesn't even flinch, and to Larry's total shock, it's Jade who comes flying at him with that gnarly sword, almost getting a piece of him. The fact that Jade was back to 100% just goes to show how ridiculously OP that instant heal ability is. Since he whiffed his shot at Laurel, a super frustrated Jade turns to Urian and is like, "What are you doing here? You know this place is basically a death trap." Urian's just like, "I couldn't just leave my bestie looking like a half-eaten burrito, could I?" And even after the magic fix, he's still asking if Jade has any boo-boos. The sword-wielding dude was totally floored by this, and quickly told Urian his healing skills were top-notch. Our boy was stoked to hear it, and also gave the all-clear on Ella's safety. Turns out he dropped her off with the princess for a little playdate earlier. Hearing that Ella was safe and sound made Jade breathe a huge sigh of relief, but getting the cold shoulder like that really ticked Laurel off. He was like, "Hello? I'm over here being all lonely," which is hilarious considering Jade was about to wet his pants in fear. And while our boy was just about dying of laughter at that cringy comment, the evil sword dude was genuinely terrified of what Larry might pull, especially since he looked ready to send them both to the Shadow Realm. In his head, the smartest play was the nope out of here special instead of a head-on fight. He even tried to warn Urian that this guy was way out of their league. This was a total buzzkill for our boy, who had just gotten his popcorn ready for a good show. But of course, Mr. Scary Noble had to go and announce that nobody was leaving the party. And just like that, he pulled that weird blurry motion trick again, leaving Jade guessing which one of them was about to get tagged as Larry closed in. So, it was a game of eeny, meeny, miny, mo, but with more stabbing. Desperate times call for desperate measures, which is why Jade busted out the Wicked Sword's form number 8. He whipped it up into a shield and, boom, totally stuffed Laurel's attack. It was pretty obvious the guy was just trying to pin Jade down. That was the gamble he took. And getting blocked like that totally cheesed off the noble, while Urian was over there like, not bad at all. See, because that demon sword is so unpredictable, Larry's grand plan was to trap Jade first, then go after Urian when he inevitably tried to play hero. So, Jade played him like a fiddle and made himself the bait. Now he's stuck, a human popsicle with a shield, unable to move a muscle. The super annoying noble started taunting him, all like, "Aw, did you think you could get away from me?" As if that little stunt was gonna save him. But Urian heard every word and was having none of it. He straight up called the guy out, cranked up his holy moly aura, and dropped a bone-chilling warning on this psycho clown. He basically said, "You even think about touching him again, and I'll end you before you can blink." Oh man, the look on that noble's face? Absolutely priceless. The dude was just standing there, having a full-blown existential crisis, like, what in the fresh heck is happening? This feeling was totally new to him. It was pure, unfiltered terror. Our boy didn't even have to throw a punch. He just flexed his aura and sucked all the fight right out of the guy. Anyway, Urian strolled over to Jade and patched him up again, which made our C-list student here a little jumpy. Larry didn't seem to be making a move. Jade had no clue what was rattling around in Larry's thick skull, but he figured this was their one and only shot to wrap this thing up. In a last-ditch, totally pathetic move to win, Larry whistled for his goons, yelling that he was done playing games. He gave the Three Stooges 10 minutes to take them both out, and you could tell these guys were just as clueless as their boss, but totally hyped for some action. And just like that, the difficulty setting cranked from survival to nightmare mode. Yeah, Jade had completely botched the math on this fight. He totally forgot that not only did they have Laurel to deal with, but that this nasty noble was a whole problem in himself. And then there was the tiny detail that all three of his flunkies were actually pretty tough, being from the advanced class and all. Suddenly, the air smelled a lot like horror, failure, and impending doom. Jade was fresh out of tricks and had no cards left up his sleeve. There was just no way he could pull out a win here. Then, all of a sudden, instead of cowering in fear, He ditched the whole "I'm gonna lose" mindset and realized moping around wasn't gonna do any good. If he didn't make a move, like, right now, from where he was standing, the only winning move was to book it. So with the few seconds he had left, Jade gripped his demon sword for dear life, trying to figure out how to stage a tactical retreat, when Urian finally broke the awkward silence. With a chill smile, Urian was like, "Hey, you did your part." And then, in a total main character move, he karate chopped Jade in the neck so fast the poor guy just instantly conked out. Our boy caught him all smooth-like, playing it off like Jade just fainted on his own. Seriously, Urian's move was so slick, nobody even saw it happen. In fact, everyone just figured Jade got so scared he passed out from the shock. Classic Jade. Our boy gives unconscious Jade a little pat and promises, "Don't worry, I'll take it from here," and then the camera pans over to Ricky. So this dude, a member of the Saruji squad, is starting to tap his foot, wondering if Urian fell into a well or something. His teammate is also totally bugging out, cause Urian Pinky promised he'd be back in a flash, and that flash has long since passed. Her gut is screaming that something's gone sideways, so the princess is like, "Forget Laurel's party, we're going on a rescue mission." And yeah, in that little window of time, Urian pulled a Houdini, forcing that scummy noble and his goon squad to play a frantic game of catch-up. Panicking about leaving any witnesses, the psycho couldn't wrap his head around how a regular farmhand could just snatch Jade's body and bounce. Moving at a ridiculous speed, right as he's about to go full-on manhunt mode, bam! Someone pops up. It's our favorite mystery man, the Hat Guy. These cloaked figures jump in, which really grinds the gears of Laurel's flunkies. But our boy isn't sweating the details. He's just seeing this as a golden opportunity to get a good stretch in. Looking cool as a cucumber, the warrior is just hoping their end is painfully slow. Totally triggered, Laurel zaps him with a move-freezing ability, calling him trash yet again, while Urian almost lets his real name slip. He quickly course-corrects, dubbing himself the genius swordsman. The henchmen, way too high on their own hype, charge him like it's a Jujutsu Kaisen beatdown, thinking he's toast. With the swordsman supposedly paralyzed, Laurel flashes a smug grin so punchable it belongs in a museum of arrogant faces. The catch is, he's got 3 beefy minions on his team, Jen Kang, the Muscle, and ILO, who seems to have a slightly unhealthy obsession with making people not alive. And then you've got Kelly, the loyal puppy dog who does every twisted thing a weirdo like Laurel asks. Laurel thinks this is his dream team for delivering a world of hurt to this fake swordsman. But the delusional dweeb is about to get a reality check, because all 3 of his goons get yeeted backwards. And here's the gnarly part. Their bodies get literally smushed into a tree. With their butts sticking out for everyone to see, welcome to the premiere of a horror movie where Laurel and his crew are the main victims. And Urian, playing the part of the slasher villain, even drops a fun fact on the slimy noble. He points out that his little freeze tag power is completely useless against a guy like him, even roasting him for using such lame tricks, which only makes the jerk see red. Stubborn as a donkey, he ignores the advice and tries the exact same move again. Laurel lunges for a stab, but, big surprise, it's a total bust. Urian snags the dagger with just 2 fingers, basically yelling, "I told you, this parlor trick is garbage." The trash talk heats up as he clowns Laurel for only having 1 move. In response, the blonde psycho spazzes out, trying to slash him dozens of times. But it's all for nothing. Even without drawing his own sword, our guy blocks every single attack, pushing the fool further into a tantrum. Laurel mocks him, saying he can't win just by playing defense. So Urian's like, "Okay, bet," and decides to shut him up by neatly slicing off the tip of his precious dagger. This sends Laurel spiraling into despair. Our guy has to remind himself that this clown is supposedly the top second-year student at the academy. But when he sizes up Laurel's actual power, all he feels is pure, unadulterated disappointment. This fight is such a waste of his time, he's just staring in disgust. So Laurel decides to go all in, pulling a massive sword from his back seriously. Where was he even hiding that thing? Then he starts bragging that he hasn't used a sword in 4 years. As if that's supposed to be impressive. The idiot charges, and Urian is actually thrilled that this snooze fest might finally be getting good. Laurel instantly pops his freeze move again and cockily rushes in, but this time he's got a whole monologue ready for the masked swordsman. He spills the beans that his paralysis trick isn't his only special talent. In fact, the main reason he's at the top of the second-year class is because of his insane, godlike speed. And what do you know? The madman actually kicks it into overdrive and starts moving like a blur. So he actually tagged Urian with his sword, a real picture-perfect hit. Or, so he thought. Now, let's smash that rewind button to last year's drama. You see, while this psycho was busy giving his classmates a one-way ticket to the emergency room, the school basically looked the other way for one massive reason. It's because his talent was so off the charts ridiculous it basically slapped a get-out-of-jail-free card on all his, Extracurricular activities. The school figured a guy this good was unexpellable. Apparently, he's the kingdom's golden goose, which is the only reason this goon is still breathing our air. And just like that, Laurel's massive ego is back online. He's puffing his chest out, convinced even the swordsman can't handle his flash, level speed, blabbering on about how being fast is the ultimate cheat code. At the same time, he's having a little brain meltdown because the masked dude just tanked a hit that was 100% meant to turn his arm into a party favor, but all he managed was a paper cut. So Urian, being the generous guy he is, lets him savor his victory for a hot second before deciding it's time for another lesson in pain. 101. Plot twist. The blood spatter on his cloak? Yeah, not his. And that's when Laurel has a sudden, horrifying moment of clarity that's his times ketchup squirting everywhere. Nope, not Urian's. It's a gnarly gash that appeared so fast, Laurel's brain was still buffering as he stared down at his brand new ventilation slit. Then the ouchies kick in and he starts screaming his head off. But this whole dramatic scene is a total snooze fest for our boy, and I gotta be real with you. I mean, there's a guy literally leaking in front of him, and the best Urian can come up with is tedious. That's how far this dude has fallen. Laurel starts whining that his talent is, like, super duper important for the kingdom, and that roughing him up is basically treason. Talk about a drama queen. But Urian hits him with a moral fatality, reminding this clown that he's the one who almost sent someone to the great beyond. Thinking about everything Jade went through gets Urian all fired up. Oh yeah, now this is personal. He promised Mr. Not-So-Handsome that he's about to experience a whole new world of regret, and at that moment, Laurel felt his soul try to nope out of his body. The best he could manage was to cower and squeak about the swordsman's identity, but right then, the swordsman was basically the Grim Reaper on his lunch break. He gives the guy a casual bye-bye as he reaches for his sword, pretty much signaling that Laurel's subscription to life was about to expire. Cut to Ella's crew. All three of them suddenly feel a major disturbance in the force, but only Ricky knew it was the one and only swordsman, Yuri Sung Sung. Having already gotten his butt kicked by him once, the princess pieces together the name from their last exam while Ricky bravely powers up, using his wind magic to chase down the creepy energy source. Saruti is yelling for them to follow, but the camera is all about Ricky's gotta go fast moment. When he screeches to a halt, he finds Laurel's unconscious, bleeding body, with Yuri Sung Sung standing over him, the very same swordsman who handed him his last L. That name was getting so annoying that even the swordsman was thinking, for real, just call me Yuri next time, my dude. Hilariously, Ricky completely ignores this thought, and still shouts the whole long-winded name. Tian's brother could now see for himself that even Laurel wasn't a match for this guy, which made him wonder why the mysterious swordsman hadn't just, permanently deleted the students yet. The swordsman clarified that he hadn't actually unalived anyone, but Ricky just heard, I'm totally trying to hide my evil deeds. So, naturally, the Windmaster whips out his blade. Vowing to drag the rebellious swordsman into the light and make him fess up, Urian, looking amused, had to ask if Ricky genuinely thought he was stronger than Laurel. The guy he had just casually taken apart a minute ago. But Tian's brother was acting like he'd just completed a secret, off-screen training arc. He was so pumped up with newfound confidence that this time, Ricky was dead set on unleashing the full power of the Great Wind Spirit. Hearing about a Great Spirit actually made Urian blink, since he only knew about the goddess Horatia, which implied there was more than one intelligent species in the game. We're talking more than just humanity, people. Regardless, Ricky juiced up his power by teaming up with it, which gave his stats a nice little boost. That insane pressure was so slick, it got our boy thinking he needed his own epic power-up move in his back pocket. Spotting his chance, Ricky unleashes 1,000 wind swords all at once. Yep, you heard me. 1,000 blades from a single swing. He aimed that whole pointy tornado at Urian, who probably thought the effort was, super adorable. It looked like a direct hit in a massive flash of light. But psych. In that split second, Urian whipped out his own sword and dropped 1,000+ cuts combo. After getting all his swords vaporized, Ricky, for some reason, sensed a golden opportunity. He actually believed he'd made an opening to attack. So, our little Virgil wannabe from Devil May Cry starts charging up a big ol' energy blast. Urian's mildly impressed again, but the whole thing is so non-threatening that he decides to hit Ricky with a pop quiz. He just asks him, hey, can you watch my back? Our bewildered Windboy doesn't even have a second to process that before. Bam! Urian gives him a karate chop right on the tushy, using the exact same move that folded him last time. A furious Ricky faceplants, totally grossed out by that move, while our boy compliments him for having more game than Larry, but spoiler alert, the ending's the same. The entire monster hunting class got totally wiped, all because of this swordsman Eurus. Or Urian, or whatever his name is. This dude is the prime suspect for sicking monsters on the rich kids, and now he's back for round 2. The class teacher, Ha Yuan, bursts into the principal's office, cutting right through the chit-chat, demanding to know if the principal's got the scoop. The principal's like, "Yeah, I've heard the whole story, even the part where the other teachers basically put her in timeout, which she is clearly not happy about." He gets it. Telling a woman with her personality to stay put is a terrible idea, but he points out she didn't fight it, letting her star pupils handle the mess. But she's got her own theory on who's pulling the strings behind this whole disaster. She's convinced it's got to be some guy with enough clout to boss the other teachers around. In other words, she's basically pointing the finger right at the principal, and he's like, "You know, you're not wrong," agreeing it's definitely some big shot noble's doing. And just a few seconds later, Ha Yuan unleashes this massive energy wave that completely shreds every single piece of furniture in his office. You know, just a friendly little warning shot for the principal, hoping he's not mixed up in this. Instead of freaking out, the principal just calmly tells Hee-won that he's just as ticked off that his students got hurt. He lays it all out, swearing he's not involved, but he's pretty dang sure the teachers who benched her are totally in on it. That's why he's giving them the 3rd degree right now, trying to crack this whole mystery wide open. In return, our resident hero tells him he should probably take a closer look at the 2nd-year advanced class, because, according to her, they're the ones responsible for getting her students taken out of the game. The principal says the kids are already in the nurse's office getting patched up after their run-in with the mystery swordsman, and he plans to grill them for more info later. Haiwen throws out a theory. What if this Eurus dude is an Imperial spy? But the principal admits they've got a big fat zero on the guy. He stresses that finding out who this guy is top priority, since he's a major threat to the school and could be hiding in plain sight as a student. Meanwhile, our major threat is waiting for his next moment to strike. A delicious plate of food. He's never going to get sick of the chow here. Ella's right there with him, loving every single bite, and Urian's just chilling, thinking they've bought themselves some time before they have to worry about getting kicked down a rank. With a bunch of students laid out from the monster hunting class, Chris decided it was the perfect time to be disgusted by how the farmers ate, calling them a bunch of slobs. But Rizzo shut him down real quick, reminding the jerk that running his mouth during a meal is also pretty trashy, which, of course, made Chris's face turn beet red. So another squabble kicked off between them, with Rizzo being so frosty that Chris just stormed off, claiming he had a very important meeting with the cowardly golden boy. Over at the hospital, Hina and Goliath were chatting about how all the civilians got attacked but were acting like they just got a paper cut. Turns out, it was all thanks to some instant healing magic. Naturally, one of the twin sisters, Mew, was immediately like, "Ooh, I want that power." Jade popped in, happy as a clam to see the two brothers were in one piece. Meanwhile, Urian was thinking to himself that Jade was a total boss on her own, and even though he totally passed out, his body was perfectly fine. Ella, on the other hand, was showering the guy with gratitude. It left him completely baffled when he found out he'd pulled a heroic sacrifice to save them both. Ella then gave him the "don't you dare do that alone again" lecture. Because they were a team now, Jade was blushing up a storm, having the time of her life. Our boy was over here thinking he'd just leveled up with his crush, and he figured getting stabbed a few times was totally worth it, right before Urian decided to absolutely demolish his dream by listing Ella's actual priorities in life. First on the list was him, second was the lunch menu, and then, after all that, Jade's name finally made an appearance. Poor dude got his heart ripped out for no reason. Lunch was a dramatic disaster as always, and the monster hunting exam results basically gave every student in the advanced class a get-out-of-jail-free card, meaning they all dodged getting demoted this round. Now, let's hit the fast-forward button and jump ahead a couple of months. The principal complimented Urian on his magic skills, then immediately told him that if he bombs this next exam, he's getting kicked out for good. So much for a peaceful school life. Once again, our boy was on the verge of getting the boot. The principal really hammered it home that he only got into the advanced class as a special case, which means his expulsion meter was way more sensitive than anyone else's, but the principal was weirdly confident that Urian would ace this exam. With basically a magical gun to his head, our boy helplessly agreed. Now, let's get into the nitty-gritty of the next big test, the latest nightmare for the first years. It's coming in hot as a midterm, where they'll have to do yet another monster hunting exam. This time, the kids are heading into the resilient forest, and they've got to scrape together a score of 20 to pass. To Rizzo, a score of 20 is so pathetic he openly called it a complete waste of his valuable time. Even Chris was floored by his sheer arrogance, but instead of giving him detention, the principal actually agreed that it was a valid concern. This prompted him to spill some top-secret info about the exam. First, he broke down the monster threat levels into 5 different types. Your run-of-the-mill beasts like tigers and bears are level 1, which means they're the weakest little babies of the bunch. And then there's a special category for monsters shaped like weapons. These annoying swords, bows, and axes are considered level 2, and coming in at third place are actual natural disasters, which are classified as level 3. We're talking earthquakes, torrential downpours, and wicked storms. The fourth type is a disease or a mental condition like depression. And finally, the fifth category has just one thing in it. The strongest of them all, the living embodiment of time itself. The principal went on to explain that a monster's power is figured out by how efficiently it can yeet humans out of existence. It's a bizarre idea that nobody really gets, but one thing is crystal clear. Every single type of monster is an enemy of mankind. Urian is totally nerding out over this new world lore, and as a side note, I gotta admit this original idea is pretty slick. Using abstract and inanimate objects as the villains is pretty awesome, but Rizzo is seriously ticked off because even after that whole big speech, the principal still hadn't dropped the bomb about needing 20 points, and Urian's sassy tone didn't even faze the head honcho. Matter of fact, he actually praised the kid for asking another killer question. The principal then spilled the beans that each level dishes out different points. Level 1 gets you a measly 2 points. Level 2 is worth a solid 5 points. And the rest are a mystery for now, mostly, cause there's zero chance you scrubs will run into anything tougher during this test. So, the long and short of it is, you gotta hunt monsters until you rack up 20 points. You've got 5 whole days, and this exam, unlike your usual pop quiz, is a personal gut check to prove you belong in the advanced class. And over here, Chris is snickering like a total goon, thinking Urian is about to get absolutely steamrolled, while our boy is on a whole other wavelength, trying to figure out how to clap these monsters without blowing his secret identity. The nosy girls ask what a level 3 is worth, and the principal proudly announces that Mew is the third genius to ask such a crucial question. He lays it down that a level 3 monster is worth a jackpot of 20 points, but in your case, you're better off running for your lives than trying to fight something way out of your league. Butting into the conversation, the martial arts teacher pops in to announce that, yeah, there's no way students are taking down critters like that. Instead, G and the dollar store Aizawa will be on cleanup duty, making sure those big baddies are handled for you. During the exam, Hai Nguyen also shows up, guaranteeing there'll be no funny business, not even from that shady swordsman. After all, she's making it her personal mission to spectate, basically telling her students to go out there and not screw up. Meanwhile, the plot thickens for Urian, who's actually hyped because this means he has to cook up a brand new strategy. To pass this thing while keeping his powers on the down low, he's thinking this exam is actually a piece of cake. The only problem is he's got 3 glorified babysitters watching his every move, and the most dangerous one is definitely Hay-1. Chris decides to stick his nose where it doesn't belong, reminding Urian he's gonna get clobbered since, aside from his freaky healing factor, he's got absolutely nothing to fight with, all while the class clown heckles him just as Ella rushes in. She promises her big bro she'll give it her all to help him. If anything, Urian's kinda stoked to get this little pep talk and starts wondering if things might actually go his way. In the next scene, Budget Aizawa zips back in with an announcement, having teleported all the students to their starting points while G seems to be using his magic crystal ball to spy on every last one of them. Thanks to some magical tech, they can keep an eye on every student, which is kinda creepy. Urian better have some 1 to 1000 IQ galaxy brain plan, or his cover is blown instantly. The principal is getting into it now, wondering who's going to be the first to crush this exam. Obviously, all bets are on the princess, who's packing some ridiculous power. The sword teacher puts his money on Ricky, who's in a whole different league. G agrees that all the first years have some serious potential. This leads them to start guessing what'll happen to the special kid, Urian, with his smart aleck attitude. Jerry butts in, convinced there's a snowball's chance in heck that Urian could take first, or even pass. In fact, Jerry's laughing his head off, thinking the farmer is about to get expelled, which has G all kinds of concerned, who keeps pointing out how crucial Urian is for the academy, especially with his instant heal cheat code. Hai Nguyen, however, stays neutral, thinking they'll see soon enough whether the kid can actually pull it off or not. The scene flips back to Urian, who's feeling super weird about being watched this closely. So, here's the pickle. If he bombs this test, he's getting kicked out, but he's also not allowed to flex his real powers in public. This has our boy deep in thought, trying to figure out what the power level curve is in this world. Because let's be real, when it comes to his instant healing trick, it's basically a cheat code. Now he's got to brainstorm what kind of school-approved powers he can use without getting busted. And just as he's having this big brain moment, a freaking giant rat pops up from the ground, ready for lunch. Urian is clearly not a fan of this ugly mug. The monster lets out a screech right in his face, but whoops, our boy's got an audience, so he decides to stick with the powers that are on his official school record. He whips out his wand and proceeds to take down the creature with a water attack. G is looking on like a proud grandpa. Jerry's starting to show some respect, and even the sword instructor and Haiwan seem pretty happy with the show. But, plot twist. Despite having a mana pool the size of the ocean, his attack was so weak it did 0 damage. He literally just gave the rat a bath. Urian, for one, is getting a real kick out of this, even though he accomplished nothing. In his head, he's like, hey, using a teensy bit of power didn't make my heart do the cha-cha of death. Before, even a smidgen of strength would have felt like a full-blown heart attack. Turns out, the only reason it hurt so bad back then was because he was trying to channel way too much juice at once. This means our boy Urian just found a life hack for his own body. All he has to do is dial it back and not go full throttle. This little trick would keep his ticker from going kaput. But the situation immediately got worse when 2 more giant rats decided to crash the party. They've got him surrounded, but Urian's still lost in his own world, wondering just how far he can push this loophole, when suddenly he spots something off in the distance. That shiny thing is a sword beast, a level 2 creature, which is basically a mystical being that's gleefully hunting down these monster mice for sport. It's slicing them to ribbons, and Urian is just standing there, amazed that the sword beast is handling these things like it's just another Tuesday. This is making the teacher sweat, thinking the kid is about to be turned into a shish kebab. But as the smoke clears, Urian is standing there perfectly fine, not a scratch on him. Thanks to his broken regeneration power, even Jerry can't help but admit that the kid somehow survived a hit that should have turned him into paste. Totally uninjured, thanks to his healing factor, Urian gets all excited because this new monster is worth a cool 5 points. And then he randomly starts wondering how his sister is doing. And speaking of sis, Ella and Jade are currently in a tag team match against a giant axe monster. I gotta admit, the monster designs in this exam are pretty awesome. Anyway, Jade's trying to speedrun this fight so they can go help Urian. They're both convinced that poor Urian is in way over his head. Guys? Maybe you should stop worrying about him and focus on the giant monster. That's literally standing right in front of you, charging up a swing so powerful that Jade has to whip out his big old demon sword just to stop it. He's totally confused why it's so strong, so seeing the raw power, Ella jumps in to lend a hand. The two of them put everything they've got into stopping the massive blow, and using their combined strength, they actually manage to push it back. Jade turns to thank Ella for the save, because obviously, now is the perfect time for these two lovebirds to have a moment. The monster is just hovering over them, probably dying from secondhand embarrassment, while Jade acts like a complete lovesick puppy around Ella. Ella, on the other hand, is so shaken up from that last hit that her hands won't stop trembling. It's dawning on her that these level 2 monsters are on a whole other level, and if her little brother stumbles across one, he could get seriously messed up, healing skills or not. That thought just steals her resolve. For her brother, Ella is now dead set on beating this monster so she can get to Urian, and Jade is totally ready to back her play. Alright, round 2. The dynamic duo squares up against a big, bad level 2 monster, feeling pretty cocky about their chances. They were already planning their victory speeches, but unfortunately, reality decided to drop a big ol' nope right on their parade, in the form of another creature. This thing that just crashed the party from the sky made the level 2 monster look like a fluffy kitten. We're talking a ginormous, I eat lumbering monsters for breakfast storm beast. Meanwhile, back in the teacher's lounge, everyone's glued to the magic TV, super into the show. Then the screen cracks, and it's not a technical difficulty, leaving everyone going, huh? Even G, the guy who's supposed to know everything about magic, is completely gobsmacked. You know it's bad when the principal's just staring blankly, with the little loading circle spinning in his brain. A cracked orb can only mean one thing, and it's not time for a new orb. A level 3 baddie just poofed into existence. And the universe said, you know what's better than 1? 3 of them. The principal is just sitting there, completely baffled by this pop-up monster party. He's thinking, I could have sworn the brochure said level 1 and 2 monsters only. This forest was supposed to be the kiddie pool of exams, you know, minimal risk of getting vaporized. And now there's a level 3 monster crashing the freshman mixer. The principal finally snaps out of it, hits the panic button, and tells Jerry, Ryan, and BH to get moving. And Huan too. Go put out the fires, literally. Their number 1 job is to keep the students from becoming monster chow, because that would be a PR nightmare. You know, jeopardizing the whole future of the kingdom and all that jazz. Cut back to the action, where the giant storm thing is on an all-you-can-eat buffet of the landscape. Ella sees this absolute unit of a creature and is basically frozen, completely speechless. The sheer I'm about to die vibe confirmed this was a level 3, no doubt about it, which brought up the tiny little question of, how in the world do we fight that thing? A stark contrast to Ella's current state of, I want my mommy. But Jade, cool as a cucumber, was like, chill out. The teachers are totally on their way. Probably. I mean, they have to be, right? He told her. Job number 1. Don't die. This gave Ella a tiny sliver of hope, even though she was still freaking out about her brother's condition. Then, out of nowhere, the wind cranked up to industrial vacuum cleaner mode and started sucking Ella towards the monster, while Jade somehow stayed put. Thanks to his ridiculously cool sword acting like an anchor, he made a desperate grab for the flying redhead. And thank goodness, they managed to link up. Jade's powering up his spooky sword, yelling, "Don't let go," all while his arm muscles are screaming for mercy. He was so focused on not playing human kite that he totally forgot about the other monster with the axe, which, by the way, just tried to turn them into a duo kebab, missing by a hair. Another near-death experience, check. Jade and Ella didn't even have a second to breathe before realizing how screwed they were. A fact Jade accepted with a nervous gulp. So, here they were, facing two monsters way out of their league. But hey, what are you gonna do? They both gripped their weapons, ready to go down swinging. With a, "here goes nothing," attitude, Ella and Jade charged, deciding to focus on the axe-wielding freak first. One problem at a time, right? So, our demonic sword dude cleverly morphed his weapon into a shield and blocked the first hit. Suddenly, the kid's feeling like a total boss. Even better, this little stunt gave Ella the perfect opening to sneak in and deliver a nasty overhead chop that landed right on the money. She carved it up like a Thanksgiving turkey, but whoops, this thing was apparently just a flesh wound. She only managed to take off a chunk of it. Still, progress is progress. The second her sword was clear, Jade jumped in for his turn. And cue the dramatic flashback to a heart-to-heart he had with his mom before he left on family business. The poor kid was making her all worried about the heavy stuff on his shoulders. But Jade was all like, "Don't worry, Mom, I got this. I'm ready to be the family's go-to guy for everything." His mom, however, gently told him he wasn't just some tool for the family to use. She was like, "Honey, you need to use that power to look out for number 1, too. And, help out the people around you." That was the whole point of having this spooky sword in the first place. And those words were now playing on a loop in his head. Then he had a flashback to his throwdown with Laurel, where he totally sandbagged it, worried that some big shots would come after his folks. It was a real pickle. If he botched their mission, or worse, let Larry just waltz away, his buddies would be in deep trouble. So, the game plan wasn't about winning. It was about playing the hero and taking one for the team so his friends could book it. He got all misty-eyed thinking about his friends and family one last time, right before Jade absolutely vaporized the axe-loving freak with the super-duper first stage of his demon sword. Ella's jaw basically hit the floor. That kind of move was insane, leaving her completely stunned and thinking, "What in the world did my friend just do?" Jade's little stunt totally baffled her, because even though they iced their first level 2 baddie, it didn't exactly mean it was time for a victory dance. The storm monster was still hanging around, and this time it had its eyes on a wide-open Ella, and next thing you know, both of them got launched. 1 second they're on the ground, the next they're human kites. Jade and Ella barely had a second to even think, "Hey, what just happened?" Getting yeeted into the stratosphere like that was bad, like really bad. From this high up, they were basically looking at becoming a pancake. You could see the pure, unadulterated, "I'm so screwed" look in Ella's eyes. All she wanted was to see her brother again. And what do you know, Urian shows up right on cue. And while he gave his sister the whole damsel in distress's princess landing, he just kinda let Jade keep plummeting, leaving the poor guy's face a mask of pure astonishment. Somehow getting over his near-death experience, Jade was actually pumped to see a level 3 monster and was like, "Hey, glad you're not dead, man." He even gave Urian the scoop that the teachers were on the move, so they just had to stall and not die. But Urian? Nah, he was ready for a quick and dirty boss fight right now. Figuring it was a golden opportunity to snag 20 points, Urian was all, "Let's team up and wreck this thing." But his brilliant idea was met with deafening silence from Jade and Ella. They were both just staring at him, probably wondering if he'd finally lost his marbles, especially with that nightmare fuel creature right in front of them, while his sister started getting some new ideas. She's thinking, "Wow, my brother is so much braver than me." When in reality, the dude was practically drooling over the thought of cashing in those 20 sweet points. Alright, rewind a bit to when our boy was taking on not just the sword-swinging monstrosity, but a bunch of oversized rats too. Urian knew he had to keep his power level on the down low because of his whole heart condition thing. The tricky part was figuring out just how much juice he could use without blowing his cover. And just his luck, a bunch of snooping camera orbs suddenly materialized out of thin air, which was literally the only thing he was worried about. With those pesky things gone, it wasn't his problem anymore, and thanks to that, he could finally let loose without having to babysit. Some gross rat tried to get the drop on him from behind, but Urian just casually backhanded the thing, clearly annoyed it had the nerve to interrupt his monologue. Meanwhile, the sword monster was having a full-on existential crisis, wondering how this kid was so OP, while Urian was just thrilled that the training wheels were finally off. Now that the cameras were offline, it was a real bummer he couldn't get a good baseline reading on his normal power levels at the same time. But hey, no cameras also meant he didn't have to bother keeping any of these monster dorks alive anymore. And get this, while he was having this little internal chat, the one-sided beatdown was already over. The sword, swinging baddie was officially turned into dust. Just as Urian was giving his little victory speech, totally soaking in the glory of his own power, he suddenly heard his sister screaming her lungs out. That, of course, sent him sprinting off to play hero. Now, let's cut back to G, who's desperately trying to put the broken crystal balls back together. Even as the principal was stressing how critical this was, the whole situation was blowing her mind, especially since a ton of their spy gear just up and died all at once. This was definitely not in the normal playbook, not even with a level 3 monster on the loose, and to top it off, fixing these orbs was being a real pain in the neck. It just made her wonder what the heck was really going on behind the curtain. Anyway, back to Urian versus the walking catastrophe, where our boy suggests they all jump the creature together. But right then, the storm monster took a huge gulp of air like it was about to blow out birthday candles and then unleashed a massive push. It was so gnarly, it basically yeeted Jade to the next zip code. Bro slammed into a tree so hard, I'd be shocked if his spine wasn't turned into a million-piece jigsaw puzzle after that. I mean, seriously surprised. Ella was totally freaking out over his new tree-shaped dent, but before anything worse could happen, Urian's insta-heal magic kicked right in. Poof, all the damage was gone. Jade was actually super stoked, probably because he knew they were going to need a whole lot more of that magical juice, especially if they wanted to have a prayer of beating a level 3 monster. Thank goodness, he finally got the memo on Urian's master plan. Their mission wasn't to actually unalive the creature. With that little epiphany, Jade zoomed forward like he was shot out of a cannon. Ella jumped right in to back him up. Their main goal was basically to annoy and neutralize this thing as much as humanly possible. If they tried to peace out, it would be a total catastrophe just like last time, since dipping on a level 3 monster is pretty much impossible. The smart play is to just go on the offense, keeping it busy with a ton of hits like they're doing now while making sure to cover each other's 6. That was the goal, anyway. But ironically, Urian started realizing his perfect plan might have a few, minor holes in it. Mostly because Ella and Jade were the ones who had to get smacked around while trying to rack up 20 points for themselves. If only they could have just bailed, Urian could have sneakily snagged the kill and hogged all the points. Oh well, both of them were wailing on that monster with everything they had while Urian was just spacing out, having an existential crisis about how he could actually help. Luckily, Ricky, the resident wildcard, decided to pop in and cast a spell. He used the power of wind spirits to whip up a colossal sword spell, then launched that sucker at warp speed, skewering the storm creature as it zipped through the air. While Jade and Ella were standing there with their jaws on the floor, Ricky started patting them on the back for being so brave against a level 3 monster all by themselves. He was calling them brave knights and everything, which only made our boy even more ticked off that Ricky just strolled in and soloed the level 3 beast. And, of course, cashed in on all the points. Jade was not a happy camper either, since he thought they were actually getting somewhere with the thing. So yeah, it was a total party foul for Ricky to butt in. And hilariously, Urian totally agreed with Jade and started complaining too. Tion's brother just completely wrecked the whole strategy they had going. Ricky, being a super laid-back dude, had no clue what the big deal was. So laid back, in fact, that he just told them to keep the points, which made Urian, the oh-so-noble swordsman, crack a huge grin. He claims it's pointless to take points from other talented students who are going to be the future of the kingdom. The thing is, even if Ricky sounds like a saint now, just a year ago he was a completely different story, acting like all the other snooty nobles. He totally looked down on farmers and common folks, but after getting seriously humbled by the masked swordsman, his whole worldview changed. So a curious Ricky challenged them to a duel. He laid out the deal. If they could show even a tiny bit of the power Eurus had, they could keep all the points. Meanwhile, Urian and Ella just looked completely stunned. Tion's brother even admitted that the commoners this year were just built different, especially when it came to that masked swordsman fella. Ricky figured a special admission student like Urian might have the same kind of secret sauce as that guy, and before that could happen, he wanted to play mentor and steer our boy down the right path, but his little duel got crashed by the sudden appearance of a creature that gives people nightmares daily. The vibe this thing gave off was so creepy, it scared the pants off Ricky and everyone else. This thing had a bunch of cringy faces and way too many arms. It basically announced it had no plans to kick the bucket anytime soon, and the impact that had on Ricky, Jade, and Ella, which made them all do this horrific party trick where they tried to give themselves a new neck scarf with their own swords, all while Urian watched like he was at a really terrible magic show. Not being a fan of his sister's final act, he hit the instant replay button and healed them before they could check out, then turned to the ugly, multi-faced thing. He asked who it was, and the creature gave this whole dramatic speech about being the doom of all humanity, basically the reason everyone hates Mondays. Say hello to Depression, a level 4 monster more extra than a hurricane, and just its presence was enough to make Jade's cool as a cucumber vibe totally evaporate, causing him to lose his lunch out of pure terror. You ever seen Ricky actually scared? Well, right now, he's vibrating like a cell phone on silent. In that split second, his brain finally caught up to what just happened. He tried to turn himself into a kebab, and there was nothing he could do, while Urian was busy giving the level 4 entity a full-body scan, casually noticing that Depression had some pretty edgy-looking scars around its wrists and neck. But even a professional sad boy like Depression was totally shocked to see that Urian was completely immune to its bummer aura. Our boy finally got offended by the personal question, but Depression figured it was totally cool to ask. After all, humans usually fold like a cheap lawn chair under its influence. As it made them do the puppet dance, Urian just smirked while Ricky struggled to even walk over and have a chat. It pointed out that the kid had some serious God mode cheats enabled, since Urian didn't just pull them back from the brink of becoming ghosts. He also gave them a free therapy session for the trauma that would have messed them up for life. Honestly, Ricky now gets just how valuable Urian's power is. For the kingdom and all that jazz, he was totally willing to take one for the team just to protect the kid and unleash his inner airbender. Ricky went full-on rage mode, but let's be real, Depression just looked delighted, like it was watching a toddler with spirit powers throw a tantrum. Ricky, after activating his wind spirit powers, got super offended that this beast dared to say its name, all while Urian was getting a free, high-speed facial from the Gale. He was thinking to himself that only a level 4 creature would be smart enough to actually talk smack and have a personality. Depression basically laughed at Ricky's comment, because duh, it obviously wasn't some run-of-the-mill monster they'd been swatting away. Before Ricky could even ask what a VIP monster was doing here, Depression got all up in his personal space, humming those creepy words again. A little tune about not wanting to die. And just like that, Ricky's body checked out, leaving him on read. And so did Ella's and Jade's. As they all started that painful neck-hugging routine with their swords again, everyone but Urian, who was starting to get really ticked off that this thing kept trying to make his friends unsubscribe from life. Even Depression, the ultimate baddie with all the power, got a little spooked by the vibe Urian was putting out. Urian, of course, just patched everyone up again. Meanwhile, the entity realized their recovery wasn't a miracle anymore. As our boy was protecting his sister with a big old bubble of anxiety and fear repellent, it announced it was going to take the boy out first, since he was a major glitch in their plan. In response, Ricky just got even more ridiculously determined. He screamed that Urian had to live, no matter what. That's when the swordsman noticed that Depression's whole emo attack was barely scratching Urian. He pointed out that the kid had magical resistance like a deity. Between the instant healing and the debuff immunity, he was basically a heroic knight, not some regular student. Unfortunately, Depression's new main quest was to permanently delete Urian. As it zoomed in to end his subscription to living, the Wind Swordsman let out a terrified yell, and right then, Jade showed up with her ultimate move. It was the big debut of her monster sword, but even that crazy-looking attack did absolutely nothing to the level 4 monster. Awkward. This just left the boy feeling super frustrated. At this point, their best shot was to help Urian make a run for it. But what good would that even do? When Depression was about to deliver the final blow, Ricky realized he had to fly solo and started messing with the wind. And just like that, he yeeted all 3 of them into the air, making them float away. Urian was already getting super bored with Ricky's pathetic little struggle. And that's when it hits you. Ricky is Tion's brother, and Tion pulled the exact same "get out of here, I'll hold him off" stunt to save you. Both brothers had the same genius strategy: get themselves offed. All it did was make Depression start window shopping for its next victim. Totally frustrated, he's like, "Dude, why won't you just run?" Ricky just lets out this sad laugh, admitting nobody's outrunning this thing. So, for his big last stand, his plan is to be a human speed bump for the level 4 monster for as long as he can. While waiting for some hero to show up, the entity totally gets it and sarcastically asks if the little fella is waiting for his knight in shining armor, especially since Ricky looks like he's about to turn on the waterworks. I'm not even kidding. I know, Ricky is supposed to be the cool sidekick, but having him this terrified is the perfect way to show how much of a nightmare his opponent is. Even though he's shaking like a leaf, the kid is desperately begging his own body to just hang on for at least 3 seconds. And in those 3 crazy important seconds, he taps into the strong wind spirit and summons a roaring dragon right out of the sky. It seriously gives me flashbacks to Sasuke's big lightning attack against Itachi. Anyway, the level 4 monster totally didn't see that dragon coming. But even after taking a dragon to the face, The terrifying creature just calmly noted how completely screwed Ricky was, especially since the thing hadn't even thrown a real punch yet. Deep down, Ricky knows he's toast, like zero chance of survival. Or so he thought. Because right then, Ryan B appeared in a flash, instantly realizing they were up against something way out of their league. This thing made a regular level 3 monster look like a puppy. Depression couldn't be bothered with introductions while the sword teacher was winding up his first attack. Meanwhile, Jade and Ella are just waking up from their nap, and our big bad is just casually floating in the air, watching the whole thing like some kind of god. It's a clear threat to every single student there, and realizing this is a full-blown emergency, the swordsman unleashes a magic technique. He creates these giant butterfly wings of wind that let out a deafening blast, a gust so insane that Ricky can barely stand up. For the level 4 monster, it's just a little annoying. The real issue is that ear-splitting sound was actually a signal. All the way in the principal's office, he recognizes the signal from the sword teacher, right as G gives him a call. She's calling to tell him she found something huge. She explains that things are getting way worse, and even if this thing was supposed to be a level 3 monster, it shouldn't be able to cause this much chaos. She's got a hunch. This entity is also the one who cut off all communications. The second he hears this, the principal immediately tries to call Haiwan, praying she picks up. After getting ghosted by Haiwan, the principal starts putting the pieces together. It's not just a random level 3 creature popping up, but all the surveillance orbs were completely smashed. With this much evidence, the principal figures you'd have to be an idiot to think this was all just one big coincidence. Only a level 4 monster could be this much of a threat to everyone, but that just makes him wonder what its goal is. There's absolutely no reason for a creature that powerful to crash a midterm exam. Anyway, the principal is absolutely furious and starts glowing with his golden aura. He decides to drag GE along with him. They're going to rescue the kids before the Royal Knights even get their boots on, and in a worst-case scenario, the principal is just hoping Riwambi can keep from getting squashed for as long as possible. Back on the battlefield, the very serious swordmaster is trying to throw down with the entity. Depression is literally laughing, like, "Aw, cute. You really think you're a threat to me, little guy?" For real, the sword teacher is basically a fly on its windshield, and the creature is reaching out to give him a big ol' high five to the face. Ricky's over there screaming his teacher's name like he's at a rock concert, while the man himself just digs in his heels and zooms forward like a cartoon character. Whipping out his windsword, Butterfly Man tries to pull off a super cool slash, but right as he's about to do his thing, Depression is like, too slow, and smushes him into dust. But P-Psych, the real swordsman pops up from behind, totally fine. He goes for another attack, but Depression just angrily swats him away with its giant hand. So Ryan pulls a fast one and teleports to another spot. Then he starts trash-talking the level 4 monster, calling it slow and pathetic. From where Ricky's standing, his teacher is moving so fast he's just a blur. The kid can barely even see him, and for a hot second, he's thinking, heck yeah, my teacher's totally gonna win this. But right as Ryan P's blade gets just inches away from landing the final hit, a massive wave of, "Oh, this is bad," hits him like a truck. Depression just used that same stop hitting yourself spell from before. Ricky knew it was game over when the swordsman suddenly stabbed his own leg. It's only after he's already done it that he figures out what happened. That's the real power of its mind control. It can just hijack your brain and make you, do the monster's dirty work for it. Now the teacher's on his knees, and Depression is just mocking him. It's all, what happened to all that big talk from a minute ago? By now, even the sword teacher's confidence has completely left the building. The guy is utterly terrified, realizing this thing is way, way out of his league, and he's totally powerless. Still, Rayun B gets his act together and limps back to his feet, trying to stall by asking the monster what it even wants. Level 4 creatures are supposed to be super rare, so one just showing up probably means it's here for a big reason. Depression knows the guy is just trying to buy time, but it's so cocky it decides to spill the beans anyway. The grand plan? Just to completely wipe out all of humanity. Ricky's in the background screaming for his master to just run for it. Even Ryambi is forced to admit he can't take on a level 4 monster. On the bright side, at least no students have been turned into paste yet, so the best plan is to retreat and report back to the kingdom. But that's a whole lot easier said than done, because the entity just grabs them both in a not-so-friendly hug, forcing them to their knees so hard they can't breathe. This thing is just loving the show and gets ready to finish them off, while they're just hoping it's over quickly. Right as it's about to land the final squish, Ricky's sister senses him from super far away, and suddenly, bam, flashbang. The crazy light coming off Ricky turns into this fairy-like woman with 3 whole sets of wings. Turns out, she's the wind spirit, the guy's power source. The wind spirit senses Depression's massive ego and decides to knock it down a few pegs by instantly blowing one of its arms to bits. Before Depression can even process what just happened, it looks up and realizes the final boss has entered the chat and is hovering right in its face. She's one of the 4 most powerful spirits in the whole world, and even though she's known for being the most selfish of the bunch, she actually came to save Ricky and put his soul back together. Depression immediately starts backpedaling, getting all polite and respectful. It's basically asking why a celebrity of her status would bother showing up to this little mess, totally confused about why she'd save a human. Okay, lore dump time. To really get what's going on, you need to know that everything in nature is basically run by 4 of these mega powerful spirits. And who's the most extra of them all? She drops the bombshell that she came here all by herself, to have a little chat with this walking pile of garbage. Depression is like, "Chat? What do you mean chat?" And she just lays it out. Let Rionbi and Ricky live. And if he agrees to leave them alone, she promises to look the other way while he's offing other random people. The fact that a spirit of her status even bothered to show up in person, to bargain with a level 4 monster, is apparently a huge honor for Mr. Gloomy. The creature can't even wrap its head around what's happening. All this fuss for 2 insignificant humans? The funniest part is her logic. They're cute. Yep, that is literally the only reason she wants to keep them around. But, the same can't be said for ugly old Depression. This thing starts questioning why a top-tier spirit would even bother sticking her nose into their little monster ecosystem. She gently reminds him that he doesn't make the rules for her, then gives him a super simple offer. Option A. He gets totally deleted by her, and his life's work goes down the drain. Option B. He takes the deal. Depression is doing some quick, sweaty math on its survival odds. It's trying to figure out if this is a threat or a get-out-of-jail-free card. Unfortunately, picking a fight with a goddess over a couple of snacks was a massive, massive risk, even for a level 4 goon like him. At the same time, it starts dawning on Depression that maybe there's something special about Ricky and Rionbi, because that's the only logical reason a VIP spirit would ever show up to intervene for them, and that truth is scaring the sludge out of Depression. It's terrified these 2 are going to level up into absolute legends, which is exactly why it tried to take them out early, hoping to mess up the Wind Spirit's future plans. But that was, without a doubt, the dumbest mistake it could have possibly made. The Wind Spirit isn't scared of anything and just straight up calls Depression a fool. With just a casual flick of her wrist, she completely obliterates him, snapping him like a Kit Kat bar. The Wind Spirit figured he was getting a big head just because she offered to negotiate, so for a little punishment, she decided to wipe the floor with this creature 4 more times. The beatdown began and ended in the next 4 blasts. She's really driving the point home that, as a top-tier spirit, erasing him is basically less effort than ordering a pizza. And just like that, the supposedly unstoppable monster was reduced to a puddle of goo. Of course, Depression pulls a tone 1000 and immediately starts to reform. This time, it's way more agreeable to the spirit's offer, figuring its grand master plan was way more important. It tries to talk like it's a big deal, while the Wind Spirit just tells it to get lost. The second she says it, the level 4 monster poofs out of existence. As for our heroes, she senses that the other monsters are starting to make their move. More importantly, the girl is over here trying to shake Ricky back to life, WWE style. The poor kid is totally out of it, and she's literally trying to punch him awake. Hey, at least we're just happy to see he's not dead. The fairy then glances over at the sword instructor, who looks like a total wreck from getting knocked out. She's pretty surprised he's still refusing to go all out with the Wind Spirit's power. Cutting back to Depression's perspective, it's having a major temper tantrum about having to cave to a powerful spirit. The guy is completely humiliated and just seething that its grand objective hit a major roadblock. But it eventually settles on a plan B. If it can't take out Ricky and his master, it can always just go after the other students taking the test. To soothe its bruised ego, which is overflowing with rage and fear, Depression coldly announces it's going to unalive every student in the forest. Or at least, that was the game plan, because right at that exact moment, a massive pillar of energy shoots straight up into the sky. Depression is just dumbstruck until it spots the person putting on this insane light show. It's Urian, that kid from before, but this isn't your average Urian. This version is in full-on beast mode because he's furious he wasn't quick enough to protect his beloved sister. At the low price of keeping his power a secret, Mr. Desperation puts on a brave face, absolutely thrilled to see his favorite boy again. He basically tells the kid, "Run all you want, buddy. This thing is so hyped up it'll find you anyway." The level 4 creature gives him a grand tour of Despairville, immediately wrapping its 2 hands around Urian's neck for a not-so-friendly chokehold. While getting all giddy, it spills the tea that anyone it messes with is dying for a way out, so the kid just lets the monster have its little moment. Right before it can squeeze hard enough to pop him like a grape, Urian hits the creature with a cold. "Yeah, I'm over this." Hearing those I've given up words and seeing Urian's totally bored expression, The kid basically roasts the level 4 creature for being a total nobody. Anger issues much? Desperation unleashes a whole spider web of arms to grab the boy, but Urian, thinking of his sister, has zero fear to give. Just pointing a sword at its throat was enough to tick it off, which, hey, also taught him a thing or two about the crazy power he's packing. With one solid punch, Urian just completely deletes despair. Control plus Alt plus deleting it right out of existence. After the whole let's fight a level 4 monster incident, the kingdom calls an emergency what the heck just happened meeting, where the principal gives King Bradenus the full rundown. He mentions how the students and teachers fought like champs before passing out, adding that they were probably patched up by the great healer. Count Dre chimes in that he probably tangoed with a level 4, since the forest looks like someone dropped a nuke on it, and Count Ray's is like, yep, sounds about right. He also points out that the monsters have been hitting the gym and getting way stronger, which sends the nobles into a full-blown panic because if the big-shot spirits are struggling, they're all convinced they're totally screwed. But then Xerxes tells them to stop whining like toddlers and remember they're in front of the king, for crying out loud. A guy with hair so perfect he looks like he just walked out of a shampoo commercial pops up and declares humanity has also been leveling up, thanks to some system upgrades. And now the knights are beefier than ever. Zia Lefton, the head honcho of the Royal Knights, basically screams that humanity will never bow down to some ugly monsters. The king backs him up, saying humans are ridiculously tough, and tells the principal to lock down any secret tunnel the monster might have used. He then orders the knights and nobles to get ready to protect the regular folks, which is when the mayors stand up to bring up another problem. The king gives him the floor, and the principal says that even though the yearly friendly throwdown is coming up, they should probably just cancel it this year. The king cracks a smile and asks, "You mean the one where our kids beat up the Empire's kids for bragging rights?" The principal confirms and explains that with all the monster chaos, hitting the pause button seems like the smart move. But the chubby Marquis got super salty when he brought up the Empire's snarky comment, which basically gave them a slow clap for their super fast monster response, and they hoped they'd still show up for this year's friendly competition. Marquis Reyes insisted they couldn't look like chickens if the Empire was being that cocky. Some nobles pointed out that the Empire's been on a massive losing streak, and is probably just desperate for an easy win this year, but the mages weren't having it. They warned everyone that 4th rank monsters aren't just dumb brutes, and this whole attack was planned out like a heist. But the chubby Marquis just got angrier. He started yelling that backing down is like handing over their top dog status in the monster war. Mages shot back that risking students' lives for bragging rights is a dumb idea, but Marquis Reyes seemed way too sure of himself, claiming they could just call in the army if things got hairy, and Xerxes actually agreed with him. He said no monster would be dumb enough to attack with knights around, but Mages reminded them about, what just happened, and asked if they really wanted a repeat. The chubby noble just laughed in his face and asked if Magus was calling the Empire a bunch of wimps. That's when the king silenced the whole room with a, "Shut your pie holes, please." He agreed it was way too risky to move forward without knowing what the monsters were up to. But if they bailed, the Empire would start a whole new political drama. With every other nation basically breathing down their necks, King Briadina admitted they were totally stuck. So he was like, "Hey, let's just ask the students." This pretty much made the mages' brains short-circuit, but the king wasn't taking no for an answer, and ordered them to drag in the kids who fought the 4th rank, plus Urian for good measure. Next thing you know, Urian's in the meeting, looking around like, what in the fresh heck is this party? And why am I on the guest list? Everyone's doing the whole bowing thing while Magus does the introductions, but the king's all right, get up, and starts laying it on thick about how their bravery basically saved the entire kingdom. Urian's just thinking, are we sure about that? While some snooty nobles are whispering about how a commoner got in, but the king cuts in, clarifying this wasn't some award ceremony. Instead, he brings up the so-called friendly competition, explaining how it's all about keeping the peace with other countries and, getting some international clout. Then he spills the not-so-secret tea. It's really just a big flex to show who's got the biggest magical muscles, and the winner gets a fat sponsorship and a whole lot of pressure. But this year, they were seriously thinking of chickening out because, monster attacks are a huge buzzkill, and just hearing 4th rank made poor Ricky feel like he'd swallowed a bowling ball. As he started having flashbacks and sweating bullets, the king spots him and goes, "Son, you're looking paler than a ghost doing the moonwalk," then told them the floor was open. But the whole team went dead silent, crickets chirping and everything, leaving the nobles to guess they were still processing their whole almost became monster chow experience. Urian figured if somebody didn't say something soon, the magic school's reputation would be toast, and they might as well kiss that competition goodbye. So, our boy Urian gets to his feet and kicks things off by thanking the king for the invite to this, exclusive get-together. He says he's got something to say about the competition, explaining how all three of them stared down a level 4 beast, didn't flinch, and came out on top as a team. And if another level 4 shows its ugly face, we'll be more than happy to send it packing. That got the nobles buzzing like a hornet's nest someone just kicked. They were chattering away like squirrels on espresso, but the king just throws his head back and laughs, saying that dragging Urian in here was the best idea he's had all year. That reaction left Urian completely baffled, like he'd just been asked to solve a calculus problem, but the king just kept on talking, saying he was appointing Urian as the kingdom's official representative for the friendly competition. That little bombshell sent the nobles into a full-blown meltdown while Urian just stood there, buffering. He was just trying to process what on earth just happened, when a particularly round noble started whining that the king seriously needed to rethink this. He argued the friendship competition was serious business, and maybe, just maybe, letting some rando be the star player wasn't the brightest move. Magus, however, was having none of it. He jumped in to remind Sir Eats-a-Lot that Urian wasn't just some random guy, but a special grade magic student, which made the dude start sweating like he'd just run a marathon. Just then, Ricky pops up to vouch for his buddy, telling everyone Urian is the real deal, having taken a hit from a level 4 and was still standing. All thanks to that insane instant recovery power of his. He was totally convinced Urian would kill it at the competition, which made our hero turn 50 shades of red. But before everyone could have a nice, heartwarming moment, some guy yells out that instant recovery is a total sham, just a fancy name for basic healing magic. This marquee character kept yapping like he was the world's foremost expert, saying the skill just speeds up natural recovery and doesn't actually, heal anything. So it's probably just a cheap parlor trick. He even suggested Ricky got hit with some illusion magic, an idea so dumb it almost made the Silver Knight's brain leak out his ears. But Magus cut him off, basically telling the Marquis he didn't know jack about magic, and that epic burn shut the whole room up. Magus then suggested they settle it with a live demo, but the nobles still looked skeptical, so he calmly asked Urian to put on a little show for them. Our boy was still trying to figure out how his day got this weird, but he took a deep breath and announced with all the confidence he could muster that his instant recovery was 100% legit. That got everyone's attention. Suddenly, Viscount Zerta hikes up his sleeve, showing off a gnarly scar on his pudgy arm that he's had for 4 years. He's like, "It's been treated, but can your hocus pocus make it disappear?" Mages had to point out that the kid's magic works on fresh wounds, not old battle souvenirs, but of course, the big guy just kept on talking. They couldn't risk zapping some poor soul just in case this whole thing was a big ol' prank. But of course, the Marquis, trying to sound like he knew anything, piped up and said, "Well, technically, a scar is just a super old wound, so if this magic is legit, it ought to work." Mayhas was clearly not impressed with Captain Obvious over there, but Urian couldn't care less and was like, "Yeah, let's do it," cause he was dying to know too. Totally blowing off the principal's protests, Urian swaggered up and zapped the Viscount's arm with the spell, and poof, the scar just vanished. Zarda stared at his arm like he'd just grown a new one, muttering about how it was now as smooth as a baby's bottom. This had all the other nobles' jaws on the floor, and even the king looked like he'd just seen a ghost. While some dude asked Xerxes if the thing was actually gone. He just nodded, totally bug-eyed, saying even his scratchy throat felt better, proving this wasn't some cheap party trick, and he declared that the insta-heal was 100% the real deal. Zia Lefton, the super-hyped commander, started freaking out, saying this was a total game-changer, because if they could use this on the battlefield or, heck, even for everyday boo-boos, it would change literally everything. Plus, if they could mass-produce it, it would basically skyrocket Urian's medical tech, and he was stoked it worked on scars. Right before Butterball decided to butt in again, asking how many times a day he could pull off that little trick. Urian paused for a beat, then casually dropped. About 3 times a day. Viscount Ray's eyes went wide for a second before his inner greed monster took over, asking if Urian could pretty please erase all his scars too. The other nobles immediately shut that down, telling him to get a grip, while Ricky was still staring at Urian like he was the second coming of Magic Jesus. The king shut everyone up again and announced that since Urian's magic was officially legit, nobody better have a problem with him being the representative. He basically said, "I've got your back, Urian," and promised he'd graduate from magic school, even if the principal had to personally carry him across the stage. Then, turning to our boy, the king basically told him to go make the kingdom proud and sign his life away in service. Urian slapped on a fake smile and agreed, but then the king threw him another curveball, asking if he wanted to be besties with his daughter, which he awkwardly agreed to. The very next day at school, Chris absolutely lost his mind when he heard Urian got the royal stamp of approval and got picked to be the big shot representative. Ella and Jade heard the news and were floored, while Chris looked like he was sitting on a cactus. He was stomping around, ranting that the nobles would never see his true genius, and demanded a throwdown to prove it. But Jade had to remind him, "Dude, the king himself picked Urian." But Urian, cool as a cucumber, just shrugged and agreed to the fight, leaving his classmates totally gobsmacked as they got ready for a duel, just like Chris wanted. Chris, who was practically turning green with jealousy, demanded that our boy hand over the representative title if he lost the duel. Everyone was buzzing as this pop-up fight went down, and Rizzo just casually whipped out some popcorn like he was at the premiere of a blockbuster movie. Jade and Ella were going wild, while Hina was pretending to think about stopping it but was secretly way too hyped to see what would happen, especially since she was standing right next to Princess Surti, pointing out that the fight might as well happen since the teachers were already there. And Hyewon just calmly started her ref duties like this was just another boring Tuesday at the office. Urian was wondering if it was cool for the teachers to be so chill, especially with Princess Surti staring a hole through him, since her dad personally hand-picked him for the gig. Hyewon calmly laid down the law, making it crystal clear that the match had to be a no-ouchie zone. She asked if both sides were good with that, and while Chris nodded, he muttered that there'd be some snapped bones if the teachers weren't around. This just made Urian call out his weird obsession, right as Hyewon poofed a table into existence and announced the winner would be decided by a coin toss, which, naturally, confused the heck out of both of them. She explained that whoever could shove the coin over to the other guy's side and hold it there for 5 whole seconds would be the winner. But here's the catch. You can only move it with magic, and if that sucker flies off the table, you're immediately disqualified. Goliath's like, why do these rules sound like they're for a kindergarten class? While Rizzo shoots back that it only looks simple but is actually a beast to play. Mew chimes in to clarify. Basically, you just have to overpower the other guy's brain to get control of the coin. And Sia adds, yeah, but if you go too hard, the coin yeets itself into the next county, and you lose. Jade piles on, saying you can even fake being weak to trick your opponent into messing up, and it finally clicks for Sturdy that this is all about mind games, not just a magic flexing contest. This whole conversation immediately gives Ella a panic attack, while Chris gets all smug, saying he's always wanted to demolish our boy, who just smiles and says, "Talk is cheap, dude. Let's see it." He even thanks them for the match, calling it a free test run for his midterm experiments. Right before the round kicks off, Chris is quietly muttering his brilliant plan to trap the coin inside his own little magic force field. His master plan is to lock it on our boy's side, watch him freak out, and then just kick back and enjoy the show as Urian completely falls apart. So, the match is about to start. Both guys get into position, and the second it begins, Chris wastes zero time, unleashing a massive spell while telling the normals to stay in their lane, which makes Goliath's jaw drop at how fast things just went from 0 to 100. Rizzo figures any sane person would try the same move, since normals are supposed to have weak sauce magic, but the very next second, Chris is looking completely flabbergasted when he finds out. The coin is just chilling right in the middle of his times formation. Urian's standing there looking totally unfazed while Hyewon starts the countdown. Mew comments that our boy's quick and precise control is pretty slick, and Sia has to admit it's not on her sister's level, but it's still not half bad. Chris starts sweating buckets, wondering why this tiny coin suddenly feels like he's trying to bench press a mountain. He's having flashbacks to that insane magic from the entrance exam, straining with all his might to push the coin. The crowd is leaning in as the coin finally, slowly, begins to move. But all that tension just pops when Ricky points out that Urian is just toying with him, pulling it slowly to mess with Chris's head. Chris is just spaced out, trying to figure out what kind of black magic this normal is using as the coin morphs into a giant letter T. He's totally convinced it's some kind of secret message, while our boy can't stop laughing his head off because it's completely random. The countdown resets without even giving Chris a chance to breathe. He grits his teeth and channels every last drop of his power to shove that coin. But Rizzo sees it right away. The guy is totally losing control and has just triggered what Hina calls a full-blown magical rage. Jade screams at Ella to get behind him. Even he's on high alert, warning everyone to be careful because the whole place could go boom at any second. Urian, as usual, looks like he's waiting for a bus. He even praises Chris's spirit, saying the guy really knows how to go all out. Then he just raises his hand and makes a fist. And just like that, all the wild magic in the arena just drops to 0. Everyone is frozen in shock as the chaos just vanishes, while Lady Hersha looks seriously impressed. Our hero finally gets what she meant when she was talking about the true limits of his power. Goliath is nervously whispering, what in the world just happened? Meanwhile, Rizzo is happily munching on popcorn, soaking up the drama, and wondering if Chris planned to have a public meltdown. Turns out, our boy just casually contained the entire explosion. Hina finds this totally unbelievable, considering how insane and unstable a magical rage is supposed to be. But when she spots that smug little smile on his face, she starts to wonder if it really was impossible. while Urian remembers the entrance exam where he couldn't control his own power. Even back then, when someone saw through his hidden power, his heart didn't explode. The exact same thing just happened again, all because Haiwan knew exactly what he just did. Urian recalled that time at the orphanage. If he ever used too much power, his heart felt like it was about to burst. So, the rule was super simple. Show off your powers, and poof, you're a goner. But then it hit him, nobody ever actually defined what too powerful meant. Talk about a major loophole. He just stared at the ceiling like, yo, Herja, are we talking about, like, actual heroes in heaven level of power here? And you know what? Herja finally cracked a smile. She was totally chuffed that our boy finally connected the dots, confirming his genius theory that her little rule meant if anyone went full-on superhero plus, their ticker would go kaboom. But see, this world was already a hot mess, a total grab bag of humans and every non-human thingamajig you can imagine. The cosmic Jenga tower holding it all together was super wobbly. If Team Human suddenly got a massive power-up, the whole shebang could come crashing down. Her face got all soft as she was like, but Urian? He's gonna bring peace to this crazy place. Using that same insane power, no less. She silently hoped he'd find his zen on his lonely warrior road trip. Meanwhile, back in class, our boy is zapping the noble with some healing magic. The dude literally sneezed himself back to life, looking around all dazed like, what in the heck just happened to me? Then he mumbles, so, do I have to tap out? All this time, Rizzo's just chilling on the side with the smuggest grin ever, totally roasting the guy. The noble's brain finally rebooted, and he remembered getting into a throwdown before his little nap. Then he glances over and sees Urian getting a full-on hero's welcome from the class. And oh man, you could practically see the jealousy fumes coming out of his ears. He slams his fist on the floor, yelling that this friendship competition is a huge deal, like, for the kingdom's street cred and everything. That's why winning was more important than who's who. So, choking back his massive ego, the formerly snooty noble actually admitted Urian beat him. Hwan just beamed, telling him that learning how to take an L is a big part of leveling up, and gave him a verbal pat on the back for a job well done. Urian shot him a look, silently thanking him for the beatdown that helped him figure out his own power level. Then Haiwan switched right back into full-on teacher mode. She announced that the friendly throwdown with the Empire was officially a go, and it was going to be 10 students from our school versus 10 from theirs. It's some old-school traditional competition, and she started rattling off the names of the first-year all-stars who made the cut. Kicking things off with a bang, Urian, who was handpicked by the king himself. She gushed about his top-tier healing skills. Apparently, he's the team's designated medic. Next up, Princess Surti, the class brainiac who's basically playing on easy mode with no weaknesses. After her was Ricky, who was totally spaced out, probably dreaming about Urian, while Haiwan was hyping up his awesome skills. Seriously, she sounded like she was reading a commercial. And last but not least, Sia and Mew, who looked about as surprised as if you told them the sky was blue. They strolled up like they owned the place, and Hwan added that when those two team up, they're an absolute wrecking crew. And just like that, the chosen few lined up at the front, rocking some fresh new threads. But Rizzo? Yeah, he wasn't drinking the Kool-Aid. He's like, I don't even want to be a representative, but what was the secret handshake to get picked, before bragging that he could take the whole lineup? Hyo-won just smirked at him like, ooh, someone's curious, and then dropped the bomb. There were 0 official criteria. None. Besides Urian, the other 4 basically got in because they all took down a level 3 monster. Rizzo's jaw just about hit the floor. It dawned on him that this school had more heavy hitters than just Princess Surti and Ricky. Meanwhile, the twins were puffing out their chests like proud peacocks. Then Hwan added that they usually have this whole complicated selection process, but a first year taking out a level 3 baddie? That was a total curveball. Like, it completely short-circuited the whole system. Rizzo still looked like he smelled something funky though. That's when Urian remembered that before this year. Only one other freshman had ever pulled off the whole level 3 monster slaying thing, and that was their senior, Deus. Goliath and Hina were both like, whoa, seriously? Ella just looked down, having a flashback to that nightmare of a level 3 tornado monster she fought. She balled up her fist and made a silent promise to herself. She was dead set on leveling up so she could be Urian's one and only Nuna. Meanwhile, Urian was totally cringing at their dorky new uniforms, but before he could even start whining, Mew slid up and, bold as brass, asked him out. Her sister and Ella just about keeled over from the shock, but Mew was on a roll, hyping them up about how their power couple vibes would make them champions. Like, yesterday. She even dangled a noble title in front of him, but Urian just stared at her like she was a 5-alarm fire in human form. The shutdown was swift and savage. He shot her down right then and there, dropping the whole marriage should be for people who are actually in love bomb. And then he hit her with the "you're too young for this" line. Sia marched right up to Urian to give him a piece of her mind, but Miu actually piped up and said he had a point. Turns out, she'd completely spaced on that whole love thing being a key ingredient for marriage. Sia just stared at her, completely baffled. But right then, Haiwen popped up in a totally new getup, announcing it was time to hit the road. Mina looked like she had no clue what planet she was on. Goliath was just standing there wondering where in the world she got that outfit, while Haiwen cheerfully explained they were all off to the Empire and that, technically, they were supposed to have bounced this morning, but a little unscheduled throwdown kinda messed up the schedule. Urian started thinking everything was moving way too fast. After a bit, the class finally rolled into the Empire, and Ella's eyes immediately lit up like a Christmas tree, just soaking in all the amazing sights around her. She wondered if this was what it was really like to live the high life. Then the smell of food hit her, and she shot towards it like a heat-seeking missile, all while Jade trailed behind, practically wagging her tail, giddy with the golden opportunity to absolutely wreck Haiwen's day. Haiwen informed the group she had some business to take care of first and started herding everyone along, but Jade was still off in her own little bubble of glee. For once, she was thrilled she wasn't picked as a rep, seeing this as her golden ticket to get closer. She casually asked him if he'd ever tried grilled clams, and that times got her attention. He launched into a full-on sales pitch about how seafood was the Empire's jam, and the grilled clams here were out of this world. So then he slid in with an offer to take her for a bite. She said yes before he could even finish the sentence, and he promised it'd be a quick in-and-out job. He was all set to treat her, but just then, Chris materialized out of thin air and announced that he was more of a shrimp guy. This totally threw Jade for a loop. The blondie caught Ella's bug-eyed reaction and started teasing her, like, "What, you never had shrimp before or something?" Then he just kept rambling on about how mind-blowing the Empire's shrimp is. Jade clutched her pendant, wondering what this fancy boy's deal was. The other guy jumped in, arguing that Emperor Crab blows shrimp out of the water, which made Ella's eyes practically sparkle. He was really laying it on thick. He went on about how Emperor Crab was the perfect meal for a classy lady like her, and again, insisted it was his treat. Chris immediately cut him off. He declared that he also adores Emperor Crab and wanted to tag along. Jade gave him a death stare and said, deadpan, that it was a two-person party, so he could, go find another date. Chris shot back that nothing was impossible for him and smugly bragged he'd just sweet-talk the owner. Meanwhile, Rizzo shuffled to the back, grumbling about how loud everyone was getting, while Hina was just waving her hands like, "Yeah, keep this drama going." Chris looked at the crew and said wandering around a strange city probably wasn't the brightest idea, while Jade was silently praying for him to take his own advice and get lost. Just then, a booming voice cut through the chaos, demanding to know who was making all the racket. A trio of seriously weird-looking goons swaggered up, with the leader front and center. He demanded to know if they were from the kingdom. Jade clocked the uniforms instantly and confirmed they were students from the Royal Magic Academy. The guy immediately started clowning on them, like, "You're supposed to be the elite class, but you've got someone rocking a black badge?" His two goons jumped right in, trash-talking the kingdom and saying they must be pretty desperate to be letting in commoners. Jade was like, "Hey, you might want to watch your mouths, 'cause Ella could wipe the floor with all of you." But the lead dork just scoffed and said some filthy commoner could never be on their level. The three stooges then launched into their cheesy, rehearsed introduction, but Jade just pointed out that the guy in the turban had to be one of the big shots for the match. Chris then strolled up with a smug grin and roasted them, saying that riffraff like them didn't belong in the Empire's VIP lounge. Ella and Jade absolutely lost it, which just made the trio even madder, since they clearly had zero sense of humor. Turban Guy, especially, got all puffed up and challenged them right then and there. He screamed at his two buddies to show them the true power of the Empire as they all charged forward. Ella immediately was like, "Nah, I got this." This made Jade a little nervous. Chris, on the other hand, didn't even blink and just said that the fight from this morning made these guys look like toddlers. While Ella was busy using them as floor mops, the dude with glasses hit the deck with a bloody nose, and Ella taunted him, saying they were way too slow and squishy to be elite. Baru, the turban-wearing leader, was seeing red and basically told his goons to scram before they embarrassed him any further. Then he whipped out two stone swords, declaring he was about to drop the real power of the Empire, but before he could even take a step, a giant monster just popped into existence behind him, making the poor guy freeze up like a deer in headlights. Turns out, Jade had just fired up his demon sword technique, and he calmly warned the guy that things were about to get messy if he really wanted to go through with it. Baru started sweating buckets and was probably wondering what kind of fresh nightmare this was. He then asked why Jade wasn't an official fighter, which just got a cryptic smile in return. Jade replied that they had even bigger guns on their team, while Ella promised they wouldn't lose, period. which just about fried Baru's brain as he stood there completely baffled. Who was it that said this kingdom had no talent this year? Just then, a new voice cut in, asking Baru if he was shaking in his little boots. She said it again, asking if the big, bad Empire students were actually scared of a few kids from the kingdom. The trio immediately started panicking and tripping over themselves to deny it. But Ryusei was totally done with their whining. She balled up her fists and accused them of dragging the Empire's good name through the mud. Then she launched a freaking huge energy blast right at them, almost scaring them to death. But a massive shield appeared out of nowhere to block it. Baru looked around, shocked that he wasn't a pile of ash, and started yelling at Jade about what he thought he was doing. But Jade just ignored him and spoke to Ryusei, saying that her last little love tap could have seriously messed them up if he hadn't jumped in. The stone-cold Ice Queen just replied that he hadn't blocked squat, because that was just her warm-up. She started charging up another ridiculous magic bomb and announced that this one was the real deal. Jade powered up again, shouting that things were officially getting way out of hand, and quickly threw up another shield. While Ryusei was getting the next attack ready, Chris casually pitched in some of her own magic to beef up the shield, which only made Ryusei even more annoyed. She snapped back, asking if they honestly thought they could stop even a fraction of her spell, and right then, she fired it off. Jade immediately went into full-blown panic mode, realizing his shield was about as durable as a wet napkin. He dodged just in time as the blast punched a hole clean through it. Meanwhile, some folks nearby heard the massive boom, figured a fight was on, and started gathering to cheer for Ryusei, who was already winding up for another blast and yelling at Jade to try and block this one, too. In her iciest voice, she warned that anyone who disrespects the Empire gets punished, and let the attack fly, but just then, Ryusei felt her own magic just vanish. At the same time, a familiar face dropped in from above as Ricky swooped down with his giant sword to parry her incoming punch. Mr. Handsome told her to use her inside voice and then hit her with a powerful wind blast, forcing Ryusei back as she shot him a look that could kill. She demanded to know who shut off her magic. Ricky tried to take the credit, smooth as ever, but the Ice Queen wasn't buying it for a second, and said it felt like a way heavier, more high-class kind of magic. And that's when she finally spotted our boy. He was just chilling in the corner, radiating pure main character energy. Her eyes went wide when she realized Urien was the one who shut down her spell, and she got super hyped, telling him to get over there and fight her. But before she could even take a step, he just poofed times into existence right beside her, totally freezing her in place. That's when the teacher gives her a little head pat and tells her to chill out and save it for the real match. 'Cause this little playground fight is over. Muse is still shook from the teleportation jump scare, but grumbles that she's out of here and is gonna go toss those goons herself. She shouts that she'll see them all at the friendly match, but next time, the kid gloves are coming off, which gets a big fat meh from Ricky. Meanwhile, Urien finally makes his entrance and helps his classmate up. Jade, using that big brain of hers, starts connecting the dots, remembering how Chris's magic also just vanished into thin air. He realizes it feels exactly the same, all while Urien just offers up a clueless-looking smile. Elsewhere, Ricky senses something's not right and sees his sword is actually damaged, even though Ryusei didn't use an ounce of magic when she smacked it. He yells over to Urien, saying they absolutely cannot let their guard down, but our boy just pulls a goofy face and is like, why not? With that, the whole crew heads over to the exchange hall. Baru immediately starts sweating buckets, realizing these new students are on a whole other planet, while Urien is the complete opposite. He's laser-focused on the buffet, practically drooling over a juicy slab of meat. Just then, a voice calls out, and a senior student, Deos, steps forward to greet Princess Surti. Surti's face totally lights up when she sees him, and Deos comments on how much she's grown. From the back, Mew gives us the inside scoop. This guy is the top dog, the strongest student in the entire Royal Magic School. Then, Haiwan gets everyone's attention and starts a roll call, going from third years down to first years, making sure all 10 of their reps are present and accounted for. Dias gives her a polite greeting, and she replies that she's expecting big things from him. But then, a loud voice cuts in, making the former hero sigh, knowing some serious nonsense was about to go down. The guy on stage is Professor Kaiser from the Imperial School, welcoming everybody. He kicks off a speech about the 7-year history of this tournament, but then he immediately starts throwing shade, mocking the kingdom for not being able to handle a simple monster invasion. He just keeps rambling on about how a level 5 monster would be a total cakewalk for the Empire, which has all the mages scowling. Finally, it's the kingdom's turn on the mic. Jerry saunters up to the stage with a grin that screams trouble. He starts off talking about the event's grand legacy, all while the Imperial School's principal is giving Kaiser a round of applause for his speech. He's even praising him for wounding the kingdom's pride. Kaiser gets all smug, thinking he's won, but Jerry's got a little something planned. He throws up a very clear one-finger salute and declares that a student from the kingdom single-handedly took down a level 4 monster. And that little accomplishment is going down in the history books. Still holding that finger up with pride, he adds that the Empire is currently on a 3-match losing streak. He says if they can learn anything useful from the Magic Kingdom, they might just qualify to be a Times Real Times magic school someday. He flashes a wicked smile and wishes everyone good luck. Meanwhile, all the mages were going wild, super stoked that Jerry was their teacher. Then the announcer got back to it. He announced that the matches would kick off in 2 days and that until then, everyone should just hang out and have a good time. Haiwan immediately chimed in that since the boring speeches were done, it was time to grub, and Urian booked it straight for the king crab table without a second thought. That's when a worried second-year student went up to the professor. He confessed that he was feeling pretty nervous, explaining that their real A-team second years were still in the hospital, and they were just the backup crew. He went on, saying they felt like they were dragging everyone down, and had no idea what kind of shady tricks the Empire was going to pull. The kid continued, saying that since a level 4 monster had shown up, this whole thing is totally rigged, but Urian just shrugged and said that just meant they had to win anyway, leaving the sophomores completely floored by his deal-with-it attitude. But then Sturdy and Ricky jumped in like, heck yeah, saying they had zero plans to lose, no matter how sketchy the setup was. The twins, being their usual hyper selves, were totally on board, while Haiwan started quoting Shakespeare like she was at the Globe Theater. She went on about how real power isn't about your fancy title but your guts, reminding them their ranks are worthless and they're only here because they're ridiculously good. Her epic speech actually made the self-proclaimed bad luck charm tear up, and the teacher capped it off by saying she had absolute faith in her crew of rock stars. Flash forward 2 days later, and it was finally showtime for the so-called friendly competition at the arena. Kicking off the 8th Magic Brawl was a live match featuring the third years, with Dias stepping up for the royal school. Dias, cool as a cucumber, told the other guy he'd be absolute toast if he lost. But the kid fired back, saying he'd win, no problem. Meanwhile, Director Lee of the Empire School was giving his player a pep talk. That player, Boganuzag, who looked like a high school knockoff of Homelander, was told he could totally win if he just didn't blow it. The announcer broke it down for the crowd. First school to snag 2 wins out of 3 matches takes home the glory. Up in the royal school's skybox, G was practically vibrating with excitement, prompting Principal Majas to ask if this was her first time at the Magic Rodeo. She admitted it was, so Majas hit her with a pop quiz. Know why we've owned this thing for 3 years straight? G figured it was just 'cause their students were built different. But Majas revealed the secret sauce. It was because Dias was basically their hometown hero. Down below, Nusag greeted his rival, bragging that he'd leveled up since they last met. The second the bell rang, he unleashed a bonkers stat buff. I mean, juicing 3 to 5 stats is normal, but this dude cranked all 8 of his stats to the max all at once. This stunt immediately made blood gush from his nose as his body screamed for mercy. But up in the stands, G and Majas were like, A for effort, kid. But Dias just casually unveiled his trump card, the Scythe of Death, which, you know, can literally slice magic apart. Realizing he was on the clock, Nuzag dropped into a pose that looked like he was about to sprint in the Olympics, aiming to end it all in one shot, which made Ricky raise an eyebrow like, what is he doing? Urian remarked that he looked like he was auditioning for a ninja movie. Director Lee knew it looked weird, remembering how that exact move had totally caught him by surprise once. Nusag called it his charge stance, a little something he cooked up, specifically to counter Dias, who had been mopping the floor with him for the past 2 years. While the power-up was strong enough to theoretically one-shot Dias, Nusag knew it was useless if he couldn't get in close to deliver the package. The problem was, the buff ran out in 30 seconds, and the director figured it would take Nusag the full 30 seconds just to run across the arena. But Nusag shot back confidently that he only needed 5 seconds, all thanks to his wacky charging technique. In the ring, Nusag got ready to move like a cheetah on a triple espresso. He was convinced his buff made him stronger than a pro hero, which meant victory was a done deal. In a flash, he rocketed straight towards Dias. Dias watched this human missile approach with a smirk, basically thinking, fine, let's not drag this out. Majas watched closely, understanding the play. She called it a terrifying technique, but also admitted it was still playing in the minor leagues compared to Dias. Before Nuzag even knew what was happening, the Death Scythe zipped through him effortlessly. Director Lee shrieked in terror, but Dias calmly pointed out that he'd only cut the magic, not the guy. He dropped Nuzag to his knees, claimed the first-round victory, and had the audacity to tell him, hey, good game. Back in the Empire team's panic room, all heck was breaking loose. Their dollar store champion got steamrolled in less than 30 seconds, which they saw as a massive humiliation and a serious skill issue. The suits were stressing that a 4th loss to the kingdom was completely unacceptable, especially while the kingdom was busy fending off a monster apocalypse. A loss here would make the empire look like a total joke to every other nation. For that reason, a win was non-negotiable if they wanted to keep their street cred and stay on top. But with their ace player getting knocked out that fast, they started freaking out that their whole brilliant plan was about to go up in smoke. Director Lee was beginning to think, uh-oh, maybe I misjudged this guy. But he quickly told the council to take a chill pill, reminding them they still had the first and second year matches, and they just needed to snag the next 2 rounds. A third-year loss would be no big deal, and victory was still on the table. However, some grumpy old dude shot back that failure would come with a price tag, a price far beyond a slap on the wrist or a stern talking to. Over on the other side, Haiwan pointed out they only needed one more W to lock in the championship. So, she basically told the sophomores to get it together and not dump all the pressure on the freshmen. The team snapped into action, and this one kid, a dead ringer for Ginga from Beyblade, had a flashback to surviving that brawl with Riro and the promise he made to never back down again. In the middle of all the hype, the Empire's sophomore captain looked down his nose at them and snickered that he totally didn't see this coming. The so-called weak insects then asked where Riro had scampered off to. The Ginga wannabe, whose actual name is Elal, clapped back with a yo mama insult. Well, that just made the next match a whole lot more personal. The announcer, loving the drama, declared the second match was on. He laid it out plain and simple. The Kingdom team was ahead, so this little showdown would decide if the Empire could flip the script, or if the Kingdom was about to score a clean sweep. The crowd went nuts for their teams, and you could tell both sides were praying for a miracle from their players. Meanwhile, Empire Captain Wool Zahra noticed the Kingdom kids were missing their fancy honor class badges, realizing he was up against the junior varsity squad. He considered this a ridiculously lame insult, and told them again to go hunt down Rarel instead. And then, boom, a magical gust of wind from him shoved the entire Kingdom team backward. Elal shouted for his squad to hold the line, screaming about Kingdom pride or something, but the Empire team was cracking up that one little puff of air sent their opponents into a full-blown tizzy, while one of them reminded the others about Zaha's brilliant battle plan. The big idea was to win with absolute, unapologetic violence, just to put on a show and wash away the stink of their last defeat under leader Zaha. He remembered the gnarly scars on his and his teammates' faces were souvenirs from Morel last year, who went totally overboard after winning and sliced up their faces just to make them get a real close look at his little sword. It got so out of hand the referee had to step in and shut it down. From that day on, Zaha and his crew trained like maniacs, hungry for revenge on Rarel. But fate, being a cruel jokester, meant they didn't even get their shot at him. Instead, they were stuck here, beating up on some lower-level scrubs. The royal team shuffled into formation, hiding their mage in the back like a precious gem, while the Empire captain wondered if this was even a fight or just glorified babysitting. Then he just casually strolled right through their formation, without them even noticing, totally catching them off guard. He moaned that he'd trained his butt off just to smash Rarel, and now there was no way to get his street cred back unless he handled this personally, before screaming that the royal bugs didn't stand a chance. Then he unleashed a magic wave that just flattened the entire team like a pancake. Elal, though seriously rattled by whatever just hit him, staggered to his feet and hollered for his team to get their heads in the game and put up some defenses, while Zaha just stood there wondering if they were even in the same league as him, because the power gap was just comical as the royal team tried to pull themselves together. The mage chimed in that he dodged the blast by simply stepping out of the way. This sparked a little idea in Alal's head, who saw the other Empire players itching to join in, but they were stuck on the sidelines because their coach had apparently told them to let the team captain have all the fun and create a one-man highlight reel. Elal tried to rally the troops with a "we got this" speech, and that's when the royal crew finally noticed that Zaha was fighting all by his lonesome. They figured he could only hit stuff up close, making him a perfect target for long-range pot shots, so they started getting into a new formation. Zaha thought this was the funniest thing he'd ever seen and offered not to attack for 30 seconds if they really thought they could win in that time. This leaves the royal team looking more confused than a chameleon in a bag of Skittles, but the mage yanks them back to reality, and they stumble forward with their half-baked plan. Before they can even land a hit, a whole 30 seconds tick by, and Zahar goes supernova with magical energy, wiping the entire team off the map in one shot. The mage is yelling out to his fallen comrades, but Zahar makes it crystal clear who's next by teleporting right into his personal space, and he sends the guy flying before he can even blink. G and the students immediately see the Grand Canyon sized skill gap, and now G's inner helicopter parent is having a meltdown, but the students just decide to let Coach Haiwan handle it, munching on imaginary popcorn while she watches in dead silence as Alal gets absolutely pummeled, all while Zahar is running his mouth, saying a pipsqueak like him has zero chance against the varsity squad and should just start begging for his life. but Alal hits him with a curveball, admitting he's probably gonna lose forever. But hey, even if everyone points and laughs, he's not quitting. He says the old Alal who used to run away is no longer in service, and he's upgrading to a dude who fears nothing, cause if he bails now, he'll be stuck on wimp mode for the rest of his life, so he's decided to never back down again. But just as he hits the peak of his epic hero speech, Zahar shuts him up with a fist to the face, sending him skidding across the floor like an air hockey puck, while coldly telling him to just die already. My dude gets up again, looking like he lost a fight with a ketchup bottle, and Zahar just screams that he's gonna have to break his leg so he stays down for good. But before he can throw another knuckle sandwich, he gets zapped by a wave of premium-grade magic that leaves him completely dazed and confused. And here comes our boy, stepping between Alal and his bully like a bouncer at, while the professor is screaming his head off for them to chill. With everyone basically face-planting the floor, the ref finally steps in and calls it a day, which makes the crowd absolutely lose its mind. Cause hey, a win's a win. Zahar, being a total sore loser, throws a cheap shot at Urian, yelling that he only got saved by the bell. And of course, his giant hype man chimes in, backing him up like, yeah, the captain's totally got this. His magic control is, like, A+. The whole squad starts nodding along, but Zahar's staring at his hand, having a mini panic attack because he remembers his magic went totally haywire back there. Ella lets out a massive sigh, totally blindsided by Urian's hero moment, while Jade's just nodding like, yep, called it, basically confirming she's the smartest person in the room. Turns out Zahar's magic poofed into thin air, because our boy Urian hit him with an instant magic begone spell, which gets a super weird, kinda creepy laugh out of Jade. I mean, who wouldn't laugh? That power is ridiculously overpowered. Urian gives Alal a pat on the back for not bailing this time, admitting it was pretty gutsy. The old guy has a deep, philosophical moment, admitting that even though he got his butt kicked, he's proud he tried, and then the adrenaline just nopes out of his system. And boom, he collapses like a sack of spuds, causing everyone to freak out and scream for a medic. Even Urian looks a little concerned. While the crowd starts whispering about how the Empire is running a total clown show, Urian, ever the hero, strolls over to the downed seniors with a smile. But right as he's about to work his magic, that one chunky noble from before stomps over, getting all up in his grill about what he thinks he's doing. Urian's like, healing them, duh? But the big guy gets right in his personal space and starts screaming. Apparently, his healing powers are on a limited time offer, and this dude doesn't want him to waste them. Urian tries to explain that, people could have some not-so-fun permanent side effects, but Mr. Important here just steamrolls him, ranting that the competition is way more important than these scrubs, and that the doctors can totally handle it. Right on cue, the medics rush in, chanting their little Healy spells. Everyone else is stone-faced, but Iwan looks like he's about to faint from the drama. And then, plot twist. One of the doctors yells that their budget healing spells are doing jack squat because these guys are seriously messed up. The head healer immediately starts barking orders to get them to a real hospital, realizing the Empire's friendly competition just leveled up to May-Mathon mode. Out of nowhere, our little dude just waltzes up and stuns the head healer, who told him to pump the brakes, while some fancy noble looked on like he'd just seen a ghost. But Urian couldn't have cared less. He was on a mission from, well, himself, to use this power to save folks. The snooty nobles could only watch in pure horror as Urian unleashed his absolutely insane healing magic, leaving every other healer in the room completely floored. As the upperclassmen started to come around, the head healer immediately laid into his team for dropping the ball, all while the princess gave our little guy a knowing smile and pretty much said she'd have been super disappointed if he hadn't healed them. Meanwhile, Mew was trying to launch herself at him, and Ricky was just vibing in the back, clueless as ever. All the first-year reps lined up like they were posing for a movie poster, while the hefty noble was still having a slow-motion panic attack. Hewen just bumped right into him and dropped a sarcastic one-liner, muttering that things were getting a little tight. Then her voice went ice-cold as she told him to scram because this area was for officials only. The big oaf nearly face-planted, but still tried to argue that if they lost, the blame would be all on her. Hewen couldn't have cared less, telling him to do whatever, then calmly told the announcer to just start the match already. The announcer looked mega awkward but carried on, declaring that the kingdom was more ready than ever. The professor tried to stop her from escalating things, but it was way too late for that. As Ryusei declared with ice in his veins that the Empire wasn't backing down, his team immediately hopped into the arena. Baru, looking completely bewildered, just kinda jumped down out of pure instinct. Meanwhile, a bald dude named Ham is getting totally amped by Urian's healing powers, and Jin, one of the less exciting twins, thinks it's all kinds of awesome, and some ginger-haired guy suddenly throws some shade at Ricky. Ryusei then tells his team that if any of them blow it, they better be prepared for a family reunion in the sky. One of the medics is gently leading a still moping Alal off the field, but then Urian calls him back, telling him to just leave the rest to them. That finally gets a smile out of him. Lady G teases Majas that he's turning into a mini Hewan, and Majas just retorts that this match could be the whole shebang. GIE points out that their team totally has the upper hand, but she's still worried the Empire's gonna pull some sketchy stuff. Majas gives a slight nod, sharing her concern, but brushes it aside as he looks over at Hai Wen, who's hyping up the team with one last pump-up speech. She warns them that the Empire is 100% going to play dirty, but finishes with a sharp reminder that they just need to win, same as always. With that, the whole crew struts in with major main character vibes, as the host gets the crowd roaring and announces that this next match will decide the winner of the whole friendly tourney, then calls the teams into the arena as the crowd goes absolutely nuts. Ryusei starts trash-talking, saying Urian won't be able to run away like last time, while Urian just gives him his best butter wouldn't melt look. But right before things can pop off, some random NPC totally crashes their stare-down. The guy with the mic steps up and introduces himself as the secretary of the friendly competition. He looks as trustworthy as a $3 bill and starts droning on about how great the event's been so far. But then, surprise, he drops the bomb that the final match has a brand spanking new special rule. Miss G immediately calls shenanigans on the last-minute switch-up. Meanwhile, the principal is muttering that the Empire probably pulled this stunt because they know they're about to lose big time. The mages don't hold back one bit, straight up calling the Empire cowards for messing with what should have been a simple 5-on-5 match. The secretary just plays deaf and raises his hand, summoning a giant frickin' tower out of nowhere, then announces the new objective is to yank a sword from the very top. He explains that it has 5 floors, and each player will be assigned to one. Whoever wins their fight gets to move up, and the more players who win, the more of an advantage their team will have. Other school officials immediately start protesting that this was never in the brochure and call them out for turning this into a series of one-on-one duels. The Empire's people just stand their ground, pretending it's totally fair, while Haiwan just smiles like she saw this coming a mile away. She proudly declares that her students aren't a bunch of chickens, which makes the entire stadium go dead silent. The host, probably terrified, just officially kicks off the match. The ref steps in and starts herding the players to their assigned floors, and one by one, they disappear into a big, sparkly, shimmering magic door. Cut to the Empire's evil lair, control room, where the principal is cackling like he just hit the jackpot, totally convinced they've already won. He's trash-talking our team, saying the healer is dead weight in a one-on-one, and the twin sisters are useless apart, all while doing a little victory dance. He keeps bragging about how his roster is way better for solo brawls, throwing out some super petty insults and basically praying for our team to faceplant spectacularly. Back in the arena, Urian walks into a room so bright he needs sunglasses, and guess who's already waiting for him? Of course, it's Baru. On a different level, the princess strolls into her zone and calmly announces her to-do list. Step 1. Crush Ryusei. Step 2. Move on. Ryusei fires back, calling her arrogant for being so cocky, but Sturdy claps back instantly with a "takes one to know one." In another room, Sia is having a sad little moment about being split from her sister when some creep named Ham interrupts, taunting that his little toy has finally arrived. Saya just silently promises Mayu she'll be right back as soon as she takes out the trash. Jin smugly declares that Mew has a 0% chance of winning, but she just lets out a massive yawn, totally bored by this bald potato. And finally, Ricky gets his own floor, which turns out to be some ridiculously fancy room that looks more like a 5-star hotel suite than a place to throw down. He was starting to think this tower was some kind of portal to another universe, but of course, that's when Mr. Big Shot from earlier decided to pop up and start running his mouth. But the Silver Knight just totally shut him down and was like, yeah, where are the stairs? Which really got under Hebe's skin because he couldn't believe he was being ignored like some random NPC. So he started trying to get a rise out of Ricky, but the knight just casually unsheathed his sword like he was bored. And with one smooth move, he sliced right through the kid, throwing in a sick burn for good measure. Hebe stumbled back a bit, then just burst out laughing like a complete psycho. Ricky's jaw hit the floor when he saw his sword had turned into a puddle of goo, and the maniac mocked him, saying he wasn't the only one with a guardian angel. His whole body lit up in flames as he stuck his tongue out like some circus freak, promising this was going to be a real party, but Ricky's poker face didn't even twitch. Meanwhile, back in the Empire's command center, the principal was having the time of his life, just picturing the absolute meltdown on the Kingdom team's faces. The professor next to him was fluffing his ego, but was secretly about to explode from hearing this for the 10th time, while Fat Egg fantasized about the Kingdom getting totally dunked on if his students could just climb the tower. Back at the arena, the director was patting himself on the back, bragging about how he totally called it that the freshmen would be the deciding factor. And he even did a little reconnaissance beforehand. Yeah, he admitted it was a dirty move, but hey, all's fair in love and magical death matches, right? Just then, the announcer's voice boomed that a player had reached the next floor, yanking the director right out of his little victory speech. He immediately figured it had to be one of the twins, and put his money on Jin, since the older brother was all about ending his fights as soon as possible. While Ham liked to drag things out for the sheer sadistic fun of it, the real shocker was Urian showing up, looking around, seeing nobody, and basically deciding to dip and come back later. Director Lee was just frozen, absolutely gobsmacked, looking like someone just told him pineapple belongs on pizza and wondering what in the world was going on. Baru remembered Director Lee giving him the scoop on Urian, saying the guy's heal was on a 3-use-a-day cooldown, and since he'd already patched up the sophomores, he was down to just 2. He also added that the healing power was pretty much worthless in an actual fight. That's why Baru's mission was to take the guy out downstairs, and fast, before his support skills could become a major pain in the butt up top. Even though the director was talking big, calling Urian some weakling and making it sound like a cakewalk, Baru wasn't buying that hype for a second. He figured, alright, kid gloves are off, deciding he wasn't going to pull any punches just because Urian wasn't from the fancy royal magic school. He then accidentally whipped out a pair of stone swords, declaring he was going all out. But Urian was just like, whoa, let's pump the brakes, buddy. Urian wanted to keep it from getting dull too fast, but Baru completely shot that down, yelling that he was aiming for 3rd place at the very least. To get to the top, he didn't have time for a song and dance, which sent Urian on a little trip down memory lane about everything that went down upstairs. Urian thought, you know, 3rd place sounds pretty sweet, not too flashy, but still on the podium. And asked Baru if they were kinda jumping the gun on the whole climbing thing. But Baru just slammed the swords together like a rock star and screamed that this was the perfect time to throw down. He went on a whole rant about how the foolish kingdom thought their students could win a one-on-one fight against all odds. But surprise, the Empire was more than ready for them. With a way better game plan to absolutely flatten Urian's crew, thanks to learning from past screw-ups. Baru ended his speech by saying that if Urian went up now, he'd still just be stuck in 3rd place. Right then, the announcer piped up that Urian from the Kingdom team was actually the first one to hit the top. But everyone was scratching their heads wondering why in the world he was already coming back down. Director Lee was trying to guess if Baru yanked him back or something, but secretly, the man was sweating buckets. He was realizing he'd majorly underestimated his own kid, and now the only thing he could do was pray the twins would actually stick to the script. On a different floor, Jin was trying to sound tough, telling Mew that he and his bro had her and her sister all figured out, calling them twin monsters. He even brought up some heavy family drama about their mom and sealed powers, claiming they needed to be together to do anything, which, for some reason, got Mew totally hyped. She was impressed the kid did his homework so well, but Jin just declared that he and his brother were the superior twin set and made his hand glow like a magic nightlight. At the exact same time, his brother Ham felt the same energy surge in his own hands, proving the two could share their power even when they were apart. He taunted that Mew and her sister didn't have that kind of twin-ternet connection, basically saying their loss was a done deal before the fight even began. In another room, a dude named Heavy was just laughing at Ricky's attacks, telling him to keep trying because his super speed wasn't doing a darn thing. As his punches left 0 marks and his wind sword literally melted, Heavy just sneered. Where'd all that confidence go, pal? Then he punted a whole firestorm right at him, bragging about how easy it was, while Ricky desperately tried to block with his shield. But, just like Professor Haiwan taught in Magic 101, wind just makes fire angrier, turning the shield into extra fuel and setting Ricky ablaze. All while Heavy stood there calling him a total idiot and shouting that he was never going to win. G confessed to Magus that she was getting nervous about the students down below and had no clue what Urian was thinking when he reached the top. Magus was already freaking out, thinking his students were losing because of the last-minute rule change, and was ready to stop the match and sue the Empire until he saw Haewon's totally chill expression. And just like that, his panic started to fade. Iwan just whispered for his students to win, and right on cue, Ricky burst out of the flames while Heavy was still laughing his head off. As Ricky whipped out his wind sword again and zipped behind him, the cocky little fire brat mocked him for not knowing basic magic theory and cranked his own flames up by 200%. While screaming that he was going to melt his sword and his bones, Heavy bragged that his fire was absolutely, positively unextinguishable. But Ricky called on the spirits for a power-up, blew right past him, and landed a combo that snuffed out the flames, knocking Heavy so loopy he fell into a flashback. Suddenly, he was seeing his dad again, telling him he'd finally made the team and was going to prove their fire family was the strongest of all. But his dad was a total downer, saying there was no point in proving anything because no matter how hard they tried, fire could never, ever beat wind. His dad explained that out of the 4 spirits, Only the wind and fire spirits ever bothered to help out humans, and between those two, Wind was getting a big head because the fire spirit, Al, apparently thought they were total losers. It was then that Heavy had a crushing epiphany. Yep, I'm a failure, just like dear old dad. And he figured their whole family tree was basically cursed to be forever single. He remembered how his pops kissed up to that fire spirit for years, only to end up moping in a corner 3 years ago. And now he was wondering if this was his moping in a corner moment, completely oblivious to Ricky standing behind him looking like he was about to blow a gasket. Ricky just glared and asked him, with ice in his voice, "So, still feeling froggy about that whole bone-melting thing you were yapping about earlier?" Meanwhile, Jin was busy throwing a glitter fist at Mew, but she sidestepped it like a pro and deadpanned, "You know, those punches aren't completely useless." Jin, naturally, took that as fighting words and decided to try another scare tactic. He went on about how without her hocus pocus, all she could do was run until she keeled over. Then he puffed out his chest and said, "It's all going according to my brilliant plan." Meanwhile, Mew called him a total snooze fest for being such a stick in the mud, adding, "That probably explains why you have 0 friends, even your jokes are lame." This whole fight was starting to put her to sleep. She thought, maybe it's time to bust out the secret weapon. Jin, completely missing the point, sputtered, "What do you mean I'm not popular?" And she shot back, "Dude, you're not just bald, you're blind too." Right on cue, the door creaks open, and in wanders Urian, looking like a totally lost puppy. He just goes, "Where's my room?" Which totally threw them for a loop when they realized this times was the special transfer kid. Jin immediately started sweating about Baharu. I mean, imagine losing to a guy whose only power is playing doctor. Urian, meanwhile, was having a mini panic attack, thinking, "Oh crap, did I just crash a party? Is this against the rules?" Suddenly, Mew flashed back to her sister Sia, telling her some fairy tale about a prince on a white horse. Mew had been like, "You mean some stuffy dude from the Empire?" But Sia was all, "No, he's the guy who shows up right when you're in deep trouble." And Mew was like, "So, he's tough, right?" Sia explained he was more of a wild card, the type to bet it all for someone they care about. Mew thought to herself, "Okay, is that strong or just plain stupid?" But then she decided it was probably brave. And now, looking at Urian standing there looking completely lost, she had a revelation. He was her white-haired, clueless prince. Urian, totally ignoring the soap opera unfolding, just told her, "Hey, when you're done with whatever this is, let's bounce. You go first so we don't look suspicious." Jin was grinding his teeth, super annoyed by this new plot twist, and snarled, "This changes nothing. The plan is still on, and I'm gonna wreck you both." As he started glowing with all that mana energy, Ham felt the power surge and figured, so little bro wants me to wrap this up. Got it. While casually sitting on Sia's injured body like a total creep, he said, "I was hoping to drag this out a little longer, but since you're in such a rush, I guess I'll just end it now." Then both brothers powered up, sharing their juice, which made their faces twist up like they'd just eaten a whole bag of lemons. Veins were popping out on their foreheads like crazy as Jin announced, "This one heart, one body mode lasts for exactly 2 minutes and 22 seconds, which pretty much makes us invincible, so taking you both down will be a piece of cake. Come at us, bros." Urian was like, "Don't mind if I do," and immediately zapped the wannabe Megamind's power level down to 0. The guy's face deflated back to its regular, non-veiny state. Elsewhere, the 2-star pupils heard all the commotion. Ryusei figured, "Sounds like the JV team started their rumble. Guess it's our turn to get this party started." And Surthy was totally on board. The princess remembered that Ryusei was supposed to be this once-in-a-century prodigy, who then decided to say hello with a little taste of her power. By little taste, I mean a freaking laser beam of magic shot out. But Surthy, cool as a cucumber, just blocked it with a tiny shield she made with her index finger. Ryusei then casually asks Surthy, "So what's your plan after graduation?" The question totally blindsided her as Ryusei pressed on, "I mean, you're royalty and all. So what's the post-school game plan? You just gonna chill in some fancy castle garden smelling flowers all day, or what?" Surthy didn't say a word, which just made Ryusei clench her fists, all ticked off that the princess didn't even have to try, since her future was already set on easy mode. Surthy finally admitted, "Yeah, you're not wrong. My brother's getting the crown, so it's not like I need straight A's to prove I'm somebody. But yeah, she's not about to be treated like some potted fern, so she zaps him right back, launching Ryusei straight into the wall like a human cannonball. She locks her eyes on Cherty's glowing pinky finger, of all things. Cherty winds up for round 2, declaring she's going to use this power to save the entire world. Ryusei just laughs, telling her maybe she should worry about saving her own skin first. Then he powers up another blast, basically yelling, "Come on, hit me with your best shot." The whole tower is groaning under the strain while the Imperial suits are scrambling to keep the place from falling apart, whispering, "Dude, Ryusei, chill out." He's thinking, since this whole joint is held up by magic spit and duct tape, if she really went full throttle, they'd all be buried in rubble by now. And honestly, it looks like he's going to crumble before the castle does. Elsewhere, Jin is getting his butt handed to him by Mew, who's just wailing on him, all while he's deliriously mumbling that this is all part of the master plan. Right before she can deliver the final blow, though, Urien decides he's seen enough and starts to leave, making her stop and ask where he's off to. His genius plan? We gotta go upstairs. She drops her punching bag, Jin, and joins Urien, wondering how exactly they're supposed to get upstairs. His brilliant strategy is to just hope they stumble upon an exit, cause if they just keep wandering aimlessly, they're gonna be lost in this maze forever. Just then, Director Lee's jaw hits the floor for the umpteenth time. A whole bunch of Kingdom students pop up at the top, screaming that there's definitely some cheating and other shady business going on. Front and center are Ricky and Moo, who just snagged second and third place. Ricky announces that this last-minute rule change smells like a total setup, a setup designed to keep them from pulling out their swords. But some nearby guard chimes in, explaining that, actually, no rules were changed at all. He insists the fine print always said only the captain could draw their sword, and anyone else trying it would get an instant boot from the competition. Ricky's keeping a straight face through all this, but inside he's wondering how long he can listen to this garbage without completely losing it. And Mew is nervously whispering that Sia is still MIA, guessing she probably pulled some crazy move and already won her fight. Ricky starts thinking, why isn't Urien up here yet? The chump he was fighting couldn't possibly hold him up for this long. He's also wondering how much longer he has to play nice before his master finally blows a gasket. He glances down and spots Hai Nguyen, who's just standing there, frozen stiff. He's like, what in the world could have spooked her that bad? All while Hai Nguyen is just muttering level 4 over and over. As a new baddie enters the ring, our heroes have to get ready for another round. Meanwhile, Sia's feeling a little bummed, hoping to find her sister soon. Said sister is still lost somewhere in this crazy castle, right as she and Urien walk right back into the exact same room they started in. The light bulb finally goes off for our boy. They've been walking in a giant circle. And right on cue, Mew starts whining that her feet are killing her. She's like, is this place really designed by a madman, or are we just idiots? While Urien tries to soothe her with a totally unconvincing, we'll figure it out. Mew then slinks up behind him and purrs that while she's not complaining about the one-on-one time, the rest of the gang might be in deep trouble. Our guy has to agree, guessing they're probably the only losers still stuck down here in the basement. Mew starts to fret that if more players from the Empire show up, her sister's gonna be in a world of hurt, though she's pretty sure Sis ditched them because she had no other choice. Then she drops the classic line, we should split up, you know, so they can cover more ground and find the stairs faster. At the same time, Ryusei is barely deflecting the princess's attack, taunting her that the only thing she's good at is running. Cherty snaps back that his moves are so predictable a baby could read them, and she's thinking there's no way he can keep blocking her forever. With no shields left, the blind girl basically dares her to bring it on, cause she is so over this and ready to finish it. The princess is like, you're right, everyone else is probably done by now, and starts cooking up another spell. Ryusei just rolls his eyes, oh, great, another light show. But she's quick to correct him like, nope, this time it's telekinesis, buddy. Right as Ryusei gets snagged by a bunch of magic chains that pin her down, the princess tells her she's about to get folded like a cheap lawn chair, but Ryusei, cool as a cucumber, just asks, so, is this that holy blessing everyone's been raving about? She juices up her legs with magic, shatters one of the chains with a solid kick, and then launches a fist straight for the princess's face. Surti gets totally blindsided with zero time to react and eats the punch, while Ryusei, now free, just looks kinda baffled that Surti is still standing. And she's like, how did you tank that with such a flimsy barrier? It shouldn't have worked. Then the light bulb goes off, and she starts thinking, wait a minute, is it that blessing thing? Cue the flashback. We get a little history lesson on how humans used to be unbelievably wimpy, even after they started building cities and all that. Yeah, they were pretty much the underdogs of the fantasy world. But one day, the universe was like, oh yeah, humans exist, and decided to drop a crazy powerful blessing on one of them. That power became known as the Divine Blessing, and has been passed down like a sacred family recipe, with Surti being the lucky winner this time around. Back in the present, Ryusei's knees go a little wobbly as it all sinks in, and she decides, alright, no more messing around. She zips in with a lightning-fast punch that catches the princess off guard, but Surti whips out her holy finger wag of doom and just takes control of Ryusei's body. This completely throws Ryusei for a loop. while Surti starts to break a sweat because this whole up-close and personal fighting style is getting a little too real for her. So she uses her mind powers to just yeet the blindfolded girl across the room. Ryusei's eyes go wide as she goes flying, and Surti can finally let out a massive sigh of relief. She zoned out into a flashback where her bro was all like, "Magic? Nah, you're good," but she was already dead set on being everyone's superhero. So there she was, chilling in a pit, when Ryusei basically asked, "Hey Surti, how's ditching that sweet, comfy life for superpowers working out for ya?" He then added that she pretty much got kicked to the curb with no choice. Then he dramatically hopped down, whining, "This is exactly times why I can't stand this power." And get this, he wished he could just be some helpless little princess. Surti was not having it, firing back, "Oh please, save the cheap melodrama for someone who cares." She demanded they throw down right then and there. Ryusei got his game face on, but naturally, a door just had to creak open and kill the vibe. She paused to see who the party crasher was, and suddenly, they were both sweating bullets as a level 4 monster just waltzed in. This thing had a real breathe wrong in your toast look. Anyway, cut to Haiwan and Ricky, just in time for the sky to go full-on goth mode, and poor Ricky turned whiter than a ghost, his brain totally blue screening. They say you could have heard a pin drop in that stadium, it got so quiet. Right in the middle of all that freaky magic, some seriously bizarre mirages started popping up, with a thick, gross green fog covering the field. As 3 level 4 baddies hovered over the castle, a massive uh-oh silence fell over everyone from the students to the royal suits. Yep, even the cheering section went completely quiet. The monsters were still a ways off, but everyone's internal we're-boned alarm was screaming. A whole 2 minutes had passed since Haiwan spotted those things, and now they were just casually floating above the stadium. No one dared to even breathe, until bam. Some character named Plague just popped up behind Ricky without a sound, calmly strolled over to the tower's upper entrance, and stepped inside. Haiwan appeared next, gave Plague the nod to get going, and then sprinted for the lower entrance as Hai Nguyen silently put all her chips on him. With that, she headed for the upper entrance like she owned the place. Then, a familiar voice welcomed her, and she turned to see a real blast from the past. It was Neely, grinning like an idiot and buzzing with energy, thrilled to see her and calling herself a lovely member of the old hero team. She giggled, saying Fate was a real jokester for bringing her back to Haiwan, then asked if he even remembered who she was. He shot back that he could never forget her. But the vibe took a nosedive when Neely casually asked why she had been taken out. Her voice went all hollow and spooky, while her face started to pull a real-life horror movie warp, and she whined about why she got left for dead when Hai Nguyen was the only chosen one. She kept asking, "Why me?" like a broken record until her whole face melted down like a cheap candle, leaving behind some seriously gnarly, rotted-out features. But Neely wasn't buying the sob story, basically calling her a team wrecker and asking how Hee-won could even look at herself in the mirror. She suggested that if the others were toast, maybe the self-appointed hero should take a nosedive and join them. Hee-won didn't even flinch. He saw right through the cheap parlor trick, called out the illusion, and told the depression its head games were, as always, straight from the bargain bin. The fake-out shattered like a dropped plate, and the real depression monster appeared, totally impressed with Hee-won's mental fortitude, noting she could still tank trauma like a champ. And he reminded her, "Hey, you also kinda yoinked one of my arms and a leg, so it wasn't exactly a shock she wasn't rolling out the welcome mat." Hee-won gave him a death glare, and the monster was like, "Okay, fair enough." He let out a little chuckle, admitting they weren't there for a brawl, but then asked for 5 minutes of their time, so he could wipe them off the face of the earth. You know, to get a little payback for them erasing his other form. But hey, he'd been showing some real saint. He-won, putting the puzzle pieces together, figured since there were only 8 of these level 4 freaks, they were a tight-knit crew, meaning only 2 of them could be in one place at a time. That meant his other half, the depressive twin, was already history. She wondered who took out the other one, guessing it might have been their own souls. She threw a punch and snarked about whether the monsters were here for a picnic since 3 of the 8 had shown up, basically calling them a pack of wild animals. But the depression monster got all sensitive about the insult, warning her to show some respect in calling times the humans before cutting her off. He repeated that they weren't here to fight, then immediately clarified that this statement was, in fact, a threat, telling them to play statue for 5 minutes. After that, it was curtains for everyone, and as proof, the plague doctor's hand started dripping these little droplets that bloomed into a nasty virus. He spelled it out for them. If they so much as twitched, every student, teacher, and person in the cheap seats would get completely deleted. Hai Nguyen instantly recognized the play, noting they were being boxed in by using a bunch of innocent bystanders as human shields. Then she added that for a bunch of monsters, their strategy was a little too clean for her liking. Meanwhile, Ricky was trying to summon every last shred of bravery he could find. He whispered a desperate little SOS to his soul for backup, but his soul was just chilling on a flower, basically saying, "Sorry, my hands are tied right now." Apparently, last time they tangled, she'd made a deal with Mr. Depression to sit this one out, while the sickness monster glanced at the girls and asked super casually, "So, which one of you is the princess?" Because, according to him, all harmful creatures looked the same and he couldn't tell them apart. The blindfolded girl stepped right up and said, "That'd be me," then asked what the game plan was if she just surrendered. He cracked a smile and said, "You harmful creatures are born liars. It's as natural as breathing for you." He admitted that no matter what she said, he'd have no clue if she was telling the truth or not. And Cersei's gut feeling screamed that this was, in fact, a level 4 monster. And the whole point of this chaotic mess was to snatch the princess. She realized they must want her alive, because if the plan was just to kill her, they wouldn't be wasting all this time on chit-chat. Ryusei told him that if he really couldn't trust their answers, he could just bounce, go confirm who the princess was, and circle back later. Because they would just wait right there like a couple of perfect angels. Disease shot that idea down and offered a much grislier one. He'd just chop both girls up and bring back half of each. Yeah, that charming suggestion made both girls freeze up. The blindfold girl leaned in to whisper that they were now stuck with 2 terrible choices. Choice number 1 was to fight together and pray they could ditch the monster and run for it, while option 2 was for her to be the decoy so the princess could escape. And even though it was a brutal plan, the second option definitely had a better chance of working. But then Cersei offered a third plan. She'd turn herself in as the princess and let Ryusei make a break for it. But Ryusei shot that idea down immediately, calling it totally nuts. Princess Cersei was right there with her, admitting they were officially out of backup plans. So, the 2 frenemies called a timeout on their beef and teamed up, ready to face the absolute horror show in front of them. Meanwhile, Durian was playing Let's Make a Deal with every single door, until it finally dawned on him that the whole place was now a giant, messed up maze. It was like something was trying to keep him out of certain rooms, which of course, only made him want to get in more, and with a wicked grin, he decided he was going to crack them all, one by one. All this while the wannabe plague doctor was floating around like a spooky balloon, with the secretary just standing there. He was trying to figure out what in the world was going on, getting super annoyed and wondering why monsters had to invade on his shift, of all times. And while he was itching to jump into action, those blasted monsters had basically hijacked the controls to the towers. Just then, Mr. Disease unleashed a gnarly wave of power that totally shocked the girls, but Ryusei was already shifting gears, as she scooped Cersei up in a full-on princess carry to yank her out of danger. She then told her it was time to get real, and Cersei agreed, whipping out her holy middle finger, and zapped the monster with a weakening spell. He scoffed, asking if she really thought that would do anything, but Cersei shot back, telling him not to sleep on her. While Ryusei was charging up her fist and let loose a massive punch that ended in a huge explosion, Mr. Disease pulled a slick anime move and just pointed off to the side, causing Ryusei's arm to just start poofing out of existence as she lost all feeling in it. Cersei didn't waste a single second and used her thumb power to block the incoming blast, then asked Ryusei if she was good. Miss Eyepatch just shrugged it off like it was a paper cut, pointing at the giant new hole in the hallway that was now their express exit. See, a few moments earlier, Ryusei had laid it all out for Cersei, saying there was no way in heck they could beat this guy and, let's be real, the chances of them both making it out alive were pretty much zero. That's why the plan had to be absolutely flawless if they wanted even a sliver of a chance. First on the to-do list. Create a new doorway. When the door is sealed with spooky-doo magic, you just gotta make your own. Anyway, back to the present, Ryusei told her it was time for phase 2 of the plan. But then she just stopped cold as both girls started leaking ketchup from their noses and mouths. Mr. Disease was just standing behind them with one finger up as the girls were frozen solid. The monster coldly announced that their whole job was to give humanity the boot, and told the girls to not even bother trying to survive in front of him, right as the whole arena got sealed in a bubble. And the poor civilians were so scared they couldn't even twitch. Even Magus felt that heavy vibe and figured it had to be some kind of mental game magic barrier. Seiya, being the smart one, pieced it together that they locked down the stadium just to box one in. He started wondering what kind of VIP target would need a plan this extra. Suddenly, her spidey senses went off, and she realized the monster was aiming down. Ricky felt it too, guessing they had to be going for the princess. Gritting his teeth, he turned to Haiwan and said there might be something way more important than all these lives at stake. He asked her what the kingdom couldn't afford to lose, and told her she needed to make a call. Like, now. Ricky flat out said he'd take one for the team, but one just smirked and asked if he seriously thought she was that bad of a teacher. The Silver Knight was stunned, asking what in the world she was up to as one started to power up. With a massive bang, Depression just laughed and said she hadn't changed a bit, declaring that her selfish moves only ever hurt the people around her. But she just warned him to shut his mouth, unless he wanted to see her really lose it. The monster stood there, completely still, as its head slowly slid off its neck and plopped onto the ground. One raised her sword and announced that Dr. Disease was next on her hit list. So, the dude just stood there, juicing up his evil mojo, while Depression was like, okay, not gonna lie, props for still having that much juice left. Then he started trash-talking her, saying she was clearly past her prime and now, thanks to her little stunt, everyone else was about to get a one-way ticket to the afterlife. Meanwhile, Dr. Disease decided it was the perfect time to unleash his custom-made, annihilate all humans super virus. He one-shot back, like, seriously? If you're gonna end the world, at least bring a level 5 baddie, before pulling off a flashy move and turning both creeps into monster sashimi. And of course, she had to strike a perfect 10.0 hero pose at the end, as the arena lights went absolutely bonkers while she finished dicing the monsters. Ricky was totally fanboying over the ex-hero's raw power, but his oh my god moment got rudely interrupted when he noticed she was sporting a classic anime nosebleed. But when she turned around, the monsters had just, reassembled themselves like nothing ever happened. Depression had this smug, I told you so look on his face, saying that even though her glory days were over, she still had some fight in her. But then he twisted the knife, pointing out she didn't have the oomph to actually, asterisk kill times them for good. Mew, meanwhile, felt like she was gonna barf watching her favorite healing magic get totally twisted by these goons. But Hewan wasn't about to quit and shot back. You guys must be dumber than a bag of hammers if you think I can't turn you into confetti again, as she casually wiped the blood from her face. But the plague doctor just cackled, saying times was the real fool for playing Monster Hunter instead of focusing on damage control. Then, with a flick of his wrist, he sprayed some nasty virus into the arena. At the same time, the princess just froze, clutching her chest. She was struggling to breathe, thinking something was seriously messing with her lungs. Her body went ice cold, and everything just felt off. Her gut was screaming that her ticker was on the fritz, all while sickness just stared with those dead, doll-like eyes. Creepy, right? Then it clicked for her. This isn't a kill shot, she said, or they'd be long gone. She reminded Sturdy that the main goal was to kidnap the princess, not turn her into a ghost. And that was literally the only reason they were all still breathing. Eyepatch Girl put it all together and said they needed a new game plan, like, yesterday. Before those freaks figure out who the real princess is, she said, I'll be the bait. You and Sturdy get out of here. She laid it out plain. There was no way they were all making it out, but hearing that totally threw Sturdy for a loop. Suddenly, she was having a major flashback to when she was a kid, watching her brother suffer through another one of his insane training sessions. She asked if he was heading back out to practice more, and when he nodded, she was like, I'm coming with. She admitted she was super jealous of him, which made him look at her like she was nuts. He asked why on earth she'd be jealous when all he wanted was to sleep for a week. She just blew that off and, all hyped up, asked what he was training for that day, hoping it was some super cool sword fighting or flashy magic. She gushed that she wanted to learn it too when she finally went to school, but he completely rained on her parade and told her to stop talking nonsense. Then he just turned to their servant, Jenny, and asked if his bath was ready. When she nodded, he just dipped without even looking back at his sister. Serty just stood there in stunned silence while Melissa, another maid, tried to smooth things over, saying the prince was probably just exhausted. But the princess quietly asked if people would treat her differently if she totally aced her classes at the Magic Academy. Then the waterworks started, and she said she didn't want to be trapped in a castle forever like some damsel in a tower. Lisa tried to comfort her, promising that one day, she'd get to live her own life. But until then, she just had to hang in there and keep trying her best. And then, her dad totally crushed her dream of going to magic school, and the rejection hit her out of nowhere. Her father explained there was absolutely no good reason for her to enroll, mainly because he wanted her to, get this, understand the real world, and learn the art of freedom at some fancy pants school. She cried that she wanted to be the one protecting her people herself, and while Melissa was trying to gently remind her to use her inside voice, the king doubled down, clarifying that everyone in this world has their part to play, and that her job description didn't exactly include savior of the people. She immediately pulled the, "Is it 'cause I'm a girl?" card, but the king shot that down, saying it had nothing to do with her gender. It was because she was, a total lightweight. He explained that if she waltzed into a fight, she'd basically be a walking get your friends killed sign, which kind of puts a damper on the whole saving people thing. He went on with his whole protecting people isn't all about punching stuff lecture, droning on about how a solid monarchy and some good old-fashioned leadership could build a super safe nation and keep everyone tucked in at night. But yeah, she wasn't having it, remembering her life goal was to not be a pampered houseplant. And then it hit her that one time her prayers actually got a response, and she got a divine power-up. So she totally screamed that sacrificing people was, like, so last season. She hyped herself up, remembering this blessing was her golden ticket out of the gilded cage and her one-way pass to becoming everyone's hero. So, in a classic fine, I'll do it myself moment, she decided to solo the boss. With that, she tried to mind whammy the monster. She did the whole pew-pew with her index finger, only to realize her mental mojo wasn't nearly strong enough to even nudge the big guy. So she brought in her thumb for backup, trying to go full-on pancake mode, but all she managed was to make the monster take a knee, like it was proposing or something, which, wasn't exactly the flat on its back she was going for. She realized her stats were way too low for this quest, but she was still dead set on a no-casualty run. Her face went ghost white as Mr. Disease just shrugged off her little mind push and stared her down, basically going, "Hey, aren't you the princess?" Well, so much for incognito mode. Ryusei yelled for her to get back, right as the monster did this weird, look-into-my-eyes gesture. And boom, next thing you know, everyone's leaking from their eyeballs and can't see a thing. Mr. Disease got up and was all, "Gimme the hand with the magic juju on it. I need that for reasons." Even though Eyepatch Girl was now seeing absolutely nothing, she still told Sturdy to hide behind her, which is a bold strategy. But before she could play blind bodyguard, the monster just tapped its own head and poof, knocked her out cold from across the room. The prince, meanwhile, was having a full-blown panic attack about what just happened to Ryusei. He begged her to say something as Mr. Creepy slowly closed in. The princess's mind flashed back to her dad's "I told you so" speech, and she was seriously regretting ever leaving her bubble-wrapped life. She wished she'd just stuck to being a regular old princess. Wished she'd never wanted the spotlight or all that power. But the chilly villain reminded her that, LOL, none of that mattered anyway, because the Grim Reaper was punching everyone's ticket, no matter which life path she'd picked. All she could see was black. That is, until a wild blue light appeared out of nowhere, and suddenly, she was all patched up like she'd just used a max potion. Standing there was Urien, who casually asked how she managed to fight that thing all by herself. He guessed it must be a princess thing, and called her performance pretty solid, which was, impressive. Completely baffled, she asked how he even got there and where the heck the monster went. Urien just gave her this super awkward, "What? Me?" smile, like he hadn't just done something, all while a pair of smoking monster feet were chilling right by his shoes. As our boy had been wandering the maze, it occurred to him that this was his first ever monster maze experience. He was finding it kinda tricky to get out, but then he spotted a big ol' magical light show in the distance and figured he'd check it out, literally just barging his way in. And what'd you know? He was surprised to find a level 4 monster just hanging out. The disease creature started screeching about another pest crawling into its domain, but then it paused, all confused because that room was supposed to be totally sealed off. Meanwhile, our guy walked over to the princess, who looked like she'd just walked off the set of a zombie flick. He started poking her, asking if she was just taking a little nap or something, completely oblivious to the giant monster looming right behind him. The monster started throwing hand signs like it was trying to summon a 9-tailed fox, trying to curse Urien, who was finally starting to think, maybe something's up. As the creature kept up its interpretive dance routine, Urien spun around with a fiery glare and asked if it built this whole stupid maze just for this little performance. The monster started sweating bullets as Urien kept going, complaining that he rushed over thinking there was some cool event happening. He asked again, but Mr. Disease decided to attack instead of answering. Urien was not having it and just casually threw a punch that completely vaporized the monster's top half in a huge explosion, leaving him wondering, where'd this guy even come from? Judging by its face, which only a mother could love, it was definitely a level 4 monster. First things first, he whipped up some healing magic for the two ladies, and Surdy immediately snapped back to the real world. She gave him a look that screamed, "Did you just teleport in here or what?" But her monster-induced panic quickly took over again. He put on his best "I have no idea what you're talking about" face, acting like he didn't know where it went, right as Ryosei's brain came back online. She was totally baffled how her near-death experience got erased in a split second and gushed that she knew our hero was secretly OP, even as he insisted he was just a regular, boring dude. The blindfolded chick called shenanigans, saying his Mr. Normal act was getting old, while the other one was just completely silent, probably rebooting her entire system. This was her first time getting the full Urien healing spa treatment. She'd seen it before, but feeling it firsthand made her realize this guy could basically save, well, everyone. And right on cue, a flashback to her dad saying, "You don't need big muscles to be a hero," hit her right in the feels, and her face got all gloomy. She was spiraling, thinking Urien was totally dad-approved while she was still stuck in the minor leagues, but he snapped her right out of her pity party. He then asked if she was seriously holding off a level 4 monster by herself, calling it awesome, which basically caused her brain to blue screen. As her face went full-on tomato mode and her mind hit the eject button, our boy wondered if his compliment had accidentally fried her circuits. Since he basically has zero filter, he quickly changed the subject to the divine blessing, which thankfully rebooted the princess's brain. She checked on it and breathed a sigh of relief that it was safe, but Ryusei was like, "Hold up, why wouldn't a level 4 just snatch that thing?" It was right there for the taking. She started thinking maybe the monster was after something else, and Urien immediately jumped in with a, "Yeah, that's probably it." Meanwhile, the blindfolded one was just happy they weren't monster chow. She figured the beast must have thought they were toast. He told them they needed to book it, and she agreed, pointing to the gaping hole in the wall. But then she paused, looked back, and asked, "So who made the other times giant hole?" The blindfolded girl was in full-on denial, muttering, "The monster did it. The monster totally did it," while Urien quietly thanked his lucky stars he wasn't busted. Ryusei, on the other hand, was starting to feel a little loopy. She was pretty sure she was losing her marbles. Which, to be fair, is what happens when you almost become a chew toy and get saved by a magic band-aid. She tried to get her game face on since they weren't out of the woods yet, but then realized she was weirdly chill about the whole giant hole in the wall situation. So she asked Urien how in the world he got there, and he just deadpanned, "Oh, I came through the hole," which made her eyes pop. Surdy jumped in, guessing he must have shown up right after the monster bailed. Seeing how he wasn't freaking out at all, Ryu grabbed his shoulder, startling him, and declared that was his whole problem right from the start. She yelled that a normal person would be having a full-blown panic attack right now. But everyone was acting way too cool. Then she started shaking him like a maraca. She demanded to know if he had any clue what kind of magic voodoo he just pulled off. That's when the princess had a light bulb moment, realizing even their terror had completely poofed. This meant our boy's heal was also a top-tier therapy session that cured emotional damage. Just then, Ryusei shrieked at the princess to watch her back as Mr. Ugly decided to make a dramatic re-entrance. He gave her the classic villain speech, "Don't even bother, it's useless," and reached for her as she stood there frozen. Ryusei made a move to intervene but knew she wouldn't make it in time. But Urien was having none of that, and poof, the monster's spooky magic just vanished, leaving everyone with their jaws on the floor. Disease threw a tantrum about him meddling, but Urien was just standing there thinking, "Well, at least this time I don't have to worry about knocking the whole tower down." That didn't last long though, as the monster shook it off. Ryusei went charging in again, while Disease basically laughed, telling her she was just tickling him. She didn't give a crap and threw a punch that set off a massive explosion. Urien, ever the hype man, was like, "Nice one." That brought a smile to her face, right before they saw the monster standing there without a single scratch. Ryusei sighed, admitting that was pretty much all she had in the tank, but Surdy told her to chin up, saying her power was easily on her level. Then she added that, yeah, the two of them together still had zero chance of beating a level 4. Ryusei was all in, agreeing they had to meet the monster's power level, when Surdy piped up that Urien's janky heal ability was the key, and both girls instantly swiveled to look at him, basically shouting that it was his time in the spotlight while he just stood there with a completely blank, "what is happening" look on his face.